And we are live.
Thank you. The March 7, 2022 regular meeting of the West Hartford Town Plan and Zoning Commission and duly designated Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Agency is called to order. My name is Kevin Ahern, Chair of the Commission, and I'd like to welcome you to tonight's virtual meeting. For the record, I'd like to note that the required meeting agenda and application materials are all available on the town's website. This meeting is being conducted in a virtual format in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act as amended by Public Act 21-2, which authorizes municipalities to conduct public meetings virtually. Will the town planner please call the roll?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Gillette. For the record, I'd like to note that Commissioner Gillette is present.
Here.
She
Here.
just did. Thank you, Commissioner Gillette. Commissioner Gomes.
Here.
Commissioner Bankhurst.
Here.
Mr. Chairman Ahern.
Here.
For staff, we have myself, Todd Dumay, Brian Pudlick, Associate Planner, and Robert Goslin, Planning and Zoning Technician. That is the role, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Dumay. For the record, I'd like to note that we have a quorum of the commission tonight. The commission members and town staff are participating by WebEx. Members of the public can view the meeting live on West Hartford Community Television at www.whctv.org and www.youtube/WHCTV5. The meeting is also being recorded for on-demand viewing and will be available on the town's website for at least 45 days. Because of the virtual format of this meeting, there are some special rules and procedures that I need to cover before I begin. First, I ask all participants to mute your device when you're not speaking. If you wish to be recognized, please raise your hand and I'll call on you in the order I see hands raised at the appropriate point in the meeting. If you're participating by audio only or I do not call on you and the debate is ending, then unmute your phone and let me know so I can recognize you. Second, all speakers must make a good faith effort to state the person's name and title at the outset of each occasion that person participates in the meeting. Third, all votes must be taken by roll call unless the vote is unanimous. And before we proceed to the first item on our agenda, I just want to note that this is scheduled to be our last virtual meeting and that we will be heading to seeing each other in person next month. I am very excited about that. But I just wanted to take a moment, this may be the third time we've tried, at least the second time we've done this, but to thank the enormous efforts of the staff, not only in the planning department, and I mean everybody in the planning department, but also the town staff for their enormous efforts to not only get us online, but do it in a way that makes us all seem relatively sophisticated, which I think is a feat. At least I'm speaking for myself. So I just wanted to thank everybody. I want to thank my colleagues. I'm actually genuinely looking forward to seeing everybody next month. And then one other quick note, I just wanted to welcome Nancy Grisilli, who was sworn in this week as one of our newest alternate members. And we're really excited to get her on board. We didn't have everything together in time to get her on board tonight for full participation, but I know she's watching and she's doing her homework, which is we really like. So I'm looking forward to having Nancy on board. All right. So then with that, will the town planner please call the first item on the agenda?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first item on tonight's agenda are the approval of the regular meeting minutes from our meeting on February 7th. At that meeting were Commissioners Ahern, Bankhurst, and Gillette eligible to vote on the minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Dumay. So we have the minutes. It's myself, Mr. Bankhurst, and Ms. Gillette. Do we have a motion on this item?
Move we approve.
Thank you, Ms. Gillette. We have the motion. Do we have any discussion on the minutes? Okay, seeing none, let me try your minds. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, the minutes are approved. Next item, Mr. Dumay.
The next item is a communication item, 22 Belcrest Road, application SUP 1374 of Matthew Cassidy is requesting to formally withdraw the special use permit application. To receive this letter, we need a motion to receive, and that will officially withdraw the application, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Dumay. This is Kevin Ahern, Chair again. Do we have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Gomes. Any discussion? I don't know if there's discussion on a motion like this. Seeing none, let me try your minds. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? And the item is accepted. So before we move on to new business, for all the blathering I did just at the beginning of this meeting, I am going to try to we have a lot of stuff on the agenda, so I'm going to try to move as quickly as we can through it. However, please tell me to go pound sand if there's any questions that are left unanswered. Please ask them. First, moving on to new business, item number 3, Mr. Dumais.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 15 Fernbrook, application inland wetland 1161 of Ralph and Kim Cohen, requesting approval of an inland wetland and watercourse permit to conduct certain regulated activities which may have an adverse impact on a wetland regulated area. The applicant proposes to construct an elevated 3-season room and attached deck using helical piles on the same footprint as a previously raised brick patio that collapsed. The proposed work is within a 150-foot upland review area with no direct wetland impacts being proposed. I would like to point out for the commission's notation, there was a late item that went out to the commission this afternoon, and one of the late items did pertain to this application, and that late item was a received set of staff comments from our engineering division on this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Dumais. Do we have questions on this item? All right, so the nature of the decision before us, inland wetland, is a determination of potential significance. So for the purposes of discussion, then I'll entertain a motion to that effect.
I move we set for a public hearing as potentially significant.
Thank you, Ms.
Yes.
Gillette. So the motion is to determine the item potentially significant. Ms. Gillette, why don't you kick it off? Or not?
I would love to say, because I love these helical pilings. It's right next to the brook, so we really do need to do due diligence on it.
Any further discussion on this item? All right. With that then, sorry, Mr. Bankhorst.
I would just say that I could go either way on this. I mean, I do think the helical piles are of minimal disturbance, yet given the proximity to Trout Brook, that does cause some concern. So those are my comments.
Any further? Ms. Gomes.
Mr. Chairman, just for the record, I'd echo Commissioner Bankhorst's comments. I was on the fence either way, but the proximity to Trout Brook, I think, warrants public hearing.
Thank you, Ms. Gomes. And Ms. Gillette.
I don't think it's on Trout Brook. It's on a branch that runs into Fernridge Park.
Right.
Is that Trout Brook all the way up there?
It's all technically Trout Brook now, isn't it?
It is on the plans as Trout Brook.
Is it?
Yeah.
It's all
Yes, it is.
Trout Brook here.
I would just jump in and say that I was on the fence, but I think that this homeowner probably expected that when they bought a property right on the Trout Brook, that there would be some inland wetlands discussions with work like this. So I am also in favor of just taking a closer look next month. So that if there isn't any further comment, let me try your minds. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed. All right, the item is set down for the March 7th. Excuse me, I'm sorry. When would this be down for, Mr. Dumais?
Our April meeting date.
All right, we'll say that. So this is set down for our April monthly meeting date.
Which is April 4th, Mr. Chairman.
Item number 4, Mr. Dumais.
Item number 4 Banbury Lane, application inland wetland 1129 of David Whitney on behalf of Nancy and Don Hunt, requesting approval of an inland wetland and watercourse permit to conduct certain regulated activities which may have an adverse impact on a wetland regulated area. The applicant submitted a plan to perform site work and associated landscaping. The proposed work is within a 150-foot upland review area adjacent to the watercourse. Submitted for IWW a receipt on March 7th, presented for determination of significance.
Any other comment on this item, Mr. Dumais? Or we'll go straight to questions?
Mr. Chairman, this is the third iteration of this application. In two prior instances, the applicant submitted an application for very comparable work. Each time the commission determined that work to be potentially significant and scheduled for public hearing, although we never made it to the actual public hearing phase because the applicant was working on addressing a number of plan-related comments. Should look familiar to everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Dumais. I saw Ms. Gillette's hand up.
I was going to say that in some ways, this is a very similar application to Fernbrook. And it, although doesn't have the same sorts of pilings, but it too is right next to the water. And I think we would be derelict in not looking at it.
Do you have any other questions or comments?
Set for public hearing as significant.
Is that a motion, Ms. Gillette? So there was a delay. I just want to confirm you
Yes.
made a motion. Okay. All right. Do you have anything to add to what you just said? No. Okay. Any other comments on the motion? We now have a motion on the table on this item. I just had a question. As many times as I look at these types of maps, I have to just make sure that I'm sure of myself here. I didn't see this site in person, but is this the slope here? Is this a fairly steep one, or would you say this is a more gradual slope towards the? I'll ask this of Mr. Dumais, I guess.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is Tom Planner, Dumais for the record. It's a fairly gradual slope until you approach the watercourse. Then the slope does drop down by approximately 10 or 12 feet over a relatively small section of the yard. So they are doing some work on that slope with a new staircase and then work right in and at the edge of the watercourse there. So the slope is steep. To Commissioner Gillette's prior point, there is some work, unlike the application, right in the water, right in or right next to the watercourse.
Okay. All right. That answers my only question that was outstanding on this. Do we have any other questions or comments on the motion? All right. Seeing none, the motion on the table is to deem the matter potentially significant and set for our April public hearing. Let me try your minds. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? Mr. Bankhorst, could you just confirm I didn't, you were an aye. Okay, thank you. Mr. Bankhorst is an aye. That's 4-0. Sit down for our April meeting. Item number 5, Mr. Dumais.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 574 600 Mountain Road, application inland wetland 1165, on behalf of the town of West Hartford, requesting approval of an inland wetland and watercourse permit to conduct certain regulated activities which may have an adverse impact on a wetland regulated area. The applicant proposes the cleaning and restoration of a culvert. The proposed work is within a 150-foot upland review area, wetland soil area, and watercourse area. Submitted for agency receipt on March 7th, presented for determination of significance.
Mr. Dumais, could you, just before we move to, are these connected? 5 and 6?
No, they're separate applications at separate points along the road and different watercourses.
I was wondering if we need to do them together. Do we have questions for Mr. Dumais on this item? Mr. Bankhorst.
Mr. Dumais, Mr. Bankhorst speaking, that this is somewhat of a maintenance issue. Is there something in the application that will allow them to do this in the future without coming before us?
Mr. Bankhorst, yes, they have requested some abilities to perform similar work in the future as part of this and then the next several applications. That was a recommendation that planning staff had advised the applicant that they were interested in pursuing.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bankhorst. Any further questions? Just quick, and we can dig into it more next month, but if we vote this on, if there's a request to just turn it into a maintenance item, would that be like Wood Pond? Would that be like where they just tell us when they're doing it?
Mr. Chairman, yes, that's probably the most comparable example we have in town of a maintenance activity that was approved by the Wetlands Agency with a reporting function back to the Wetland Agency. in terms of your approval to not exceed a certain scope, if you will. Otherwise, that would trigger a new application.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Dumay. Do we have a motion on this item? Ms. Gillette? You are muted, Ms. Gillette. There you go.
I was just going to ask, this is all part of the Albany Avenue Mountain Road intersection area, is that correct?
That's correct.
And the next one as well, but it's on the other side. Yeah?
Correct. Correct.
Okay. I thought we had approved this already. But
Commissioner,
I'll do it again.
a couple of years ago, you approved the next application we'll talk about, but not this particular one that's south of that intersection.
All right. Do we have any other questions or a motion on this item?
Mr. Chairman, just a question through you to Mr. Dumay. Mr. Dumay, the application you're referring to several years ago that the commission approved, how did the commission determine or vote on significance? Was it determined to be potentially significant?
It was Commissioner Gomes. There was work directly in the watercourse, and we'll get to that one next. And they're basically proposing the same activity, but it was to remove a significant amount of sedimentation from the culvert, which caused direct disturbance into access along channel banks and disturb the watercourse as they were removing the accumulated sediment.
Thank you, Mr. Dumay.
Ms. Gillette?
Am I correct too, as I recall, there was a lot of removal of invasive species and things like that associated with these areas? Japanese knotweed being everywhere?
I do not recall that detail, Ms. Gillette. I'd have to go back and look at the prior iteration. I seem to think it focused most heavily on that significant accumulated sediment removal.
Thank you, Ms. Gillette. Any further questions? Do we have a motion on this item? Mr. Binkhorst?
I'll make a motion to set it for our April 4th hearing.
All right, and that would be a motion to determine it potentially significant. All right, now we have a motion on the table. Any discussion on the motion? All right, seeing none, let me try your minds. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed. All right, the item is set down for our April meeting. Item number 6, Mr. Dumay.
Item number 6, 660, 666, and 67 Mountain Road, application inland wetland 1166 on behalf of the town of West Hartford, requesting approval of an inland wetland and watercourse permit to conduct certain regulated activities which may have an adverse impact on a wetland regulated area. The applicant proposes the cleaning and the restoration of the culvert. The proposed work is within a 150-foot upland review area, wetland soils, and watercourse area. Submitted for agency receipt on March 7th, presented for a determination of significance.
Thank you, Mr. Dumay. Do we have any questions on this item? Ms. Gomes?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Dumay. Mr. Dumay, I saw in the narrative that in connection with this work, there would be small encroachments on private property on the upstream and downstream ends. Have the property owners been notified of this application?
Our engineering division has notified them, yes, and we will get affirmative confirmation from those property owners prior to going to hearing their consent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dumay. Do we have any other questions for Mr. Dumay on this item? All right. Do we have a motion on this item? Mr. Binkhorst?
Similar to the preceding application, I'll make a motion to set this for our April 4th hearing and determine it potentially significant.
Thank you, Mr. Binkhorst. We have the motion on the table. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, let me try your minds. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed. Item is set down for our April meeting. Item number 7, Mr. Dumay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item number 7, 14 Wendy Lane, application inland 1168 on behalf of the town of West Hartford, requesting an approval of an inland wetland and watercourse permit to conduct certain regulated activities which may have an adverse impact on a wetland regulated area. The proposed activity is for the repair and restoration of a town-owned drainage system. The proposed work is within a 150-foot upland review area and watercourse. Submitted for agency receipt on March 7th, presented for a determination of significance.
Thank you, Mr. Dumay. Do we have any questions on this item? Seeing none. Mr. Dumay, I'm curious, in terms of, I'm thinking more ahead already of the meeting next month. And I noticed that the town applications are split between Ms. Vieira and Mr. McCabe. But to the extent that we can streamline things next month, it'd be great if they can somehow work together to make these presentations run smoothly.
Mr. Chairman, I will discuss that with the new town engineer, Greg Summer, but I believe the applications were divided equally among staff because Mr. McCabe is reviewing the work of Ms. Vieira and Ms. Vieira reviewing the work of Mr. McCabe to provide that staff review. So that might be problematic from a presentation standpoint, but I'll confirm that and suggest it if available.
Whatever works, that's fine, I'm sorry. Ms. Gillette.
And it strikes me too is that the applications are all substantially separate.
Yeah.
Of the town ones. They aren't the same place. There's a correlation between Mountain Road, but the others, Wendy Lane is, I would like to have some understanding about the flow from the storm drains, where the water that comes out of that pipe comes from, whether it's from the pond or whether it's from the storm drains or both. Because the pond across the street is marked as outlet, which seems to indicate, I don't understand where the water comes from and where it's going. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Gillette. Do we have any other questions for Mr. Dumay? All right, seeing none, do we have a motion on this item? Mr. Bankhorst.
Make a motion to deem it potentially significant and set it for public hearing on April 4th.
Thank you, Mr. Bankhorst. Any discussion on the motion? All right, seeing none, let me try your minds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed. Item will be set down for our April meeting. Item number 8, Mr. Dumay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Continuing with our theme of exciting town wetland applications, 3438 Fairfield Road, application 1171 on behalf of the town of West Hartford, requesting approval of an inland wetland and watercourse permit to conduct certain regulated activities which may have an adverse impact on our wetland regulated area. The applicant proposes the repair and restoration of a town-owned drainage system. The proposed work is within a 150-foot upland review area and watercourse. Submitted for agency receipt on March 7th, presented for determination of significance.
I am personally very excited about these. I actually mean that only insofar as like it's nice to see the town is doing this work and that this kind of volume, as it were, is kind of being explored. You know, it's kicking up. So, do you have any questions for Mr. Dumay on this one? Seeing none, then let's entertain a motion on this item.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
move
Ms.
to, thank you. I move to determine this item as potentially significant and set for a public hearing in April 4th, I believe.
Thank you, Ms. Gomes. We have a motion on the table. Any discussion on the motion?
I'm here.
Seeing none, let me try your minds. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed. 4-0. It's set down for our April meeting. All right. All right. So we are in our public hearing section. Then Mr. Dumay, item number 9. Should I start or you start?
Mr. Chairman, you could read the public hearing preamble, and then when it's the appropriate time, I can read the legal notice for the next item.
All right. The last time you guys ever have to listen to this, God willing, and the creek don't rise. So good evening again. I'm Kevin Ahern, Chair of the Town Planning and Zoning Commission. I'd like to welcome you to tonight's public hearings of the Town Plan and Zoning Commission also acting as the Inland Wetlands and Watercourse Agency. For the record, I'd like to note that the required meeting agenda, application materials, and legal notices are all available on the town website. This meeting is being conducted in a virtual format in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act as amended by Public Act 21-2, which authorizes municipalities to conduct public meetings virtually. I'd now like to outline for all the attendees the rules of engagement and how the commission operates a public hearing. Those presenting or commenting should state their name and address for the record, and please spell your name. The commissioners may ask questions during the testimony of the applicant. All questions or comments will be directed through the chair and only after recognition by the chair, including follow-ups. If feasible, the chair will have the members hold their questions until the end of the applicant's presentation or the end of a logical break in the applicant's presentation. Following the testimony of the applicant, the public will have a chance to comment about the current application. First, those wishing to speak in favor of the application, then those wishing to speak in opposition to the application, and then finally those wishing to speak but neither in opposition nor support of the application. Upon conclusion of the public's comments, the applicant will have an opportunity to address the opinions expressed. And upon conclusion of the applicant's rebuttal, if there's no further questions from the commissioners, the public hearing will be closed. It is the practice of the commission to render a decision on an application the same night following all items on the public meeting agenda. And with that, will the town planner please read the legal notice?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. West Hartford Plan and Zoning Commission legal notice. The Town of West Hartford Plan and Zoning Commission, also acting as the Inland, Wetland, and Watercourse Agency, will hold its regular meeting at 6 p.m. on Monday, March 7th, 2022. The public hearing and meeting will be conducted exclusively in a format in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act as amended by Public Act 21-2, which authorizes municipalities to conduct public hearing meetings virtually. Following proceedings will convene at 6:15 p.m. or soon thereafter as the matter may be heard. 1678 Asylum Avenue, University of St. Joseph. Application SUP 1336 Look Back of John Meeking on behalf of the University of St. Joseph, requesting TPZ review and look back of compliance with conditions for SUP 1336, which was originally approved on May 6, 2019 for synthetic turf field and athletic field lighting. Submitted for TPC receipt on February 7th, required public hearing scheduled for March 7th. The application is available for public review in the Town Planning and Zoning Office, room 214, Town Hall, 50 South Main Street, West Hartford, Connecticut, or by visiting the town's website, or by email request to comment.tpz@westhartfordct.gov. Virtual meeting viewing instructions. Members of the public can view the meeting live on YouTube or on West Hartford Community Television at www.whctv.org and YouTube/WHCTV5. The meeting is also being recorded for on-demand viewing and will be available on the town's website for at least 45 days. Any interested person may participate in real time by calling 1-408-418-9388 and using the following access code: 2336-974-6105. Participants using caller ID blocking will not be permitted to participate. When prompted by the chair or moderator, participants will have the permission to speak on matters germane to the hearing. Any interested person may submit written comment via email to comment.tpc@westhartfordct.gov or via mail to the Town Planning and Zoning Commission, Planning and Zoning Office, room 214, Town Hall. Written comments will be made part of the record at the March 7th, 2022 public hearing and posted on the town's website. In order to be included as part of the record, comments must meet the following requirements. They must be received no later than 3:30 p.m. on March 7th. The subject of the email shall include the application number and address. The body of the email must begin with the interested person's full name and street address, and the comments must be germane to the application and not longer than 500 words. Kevin Ahern, TPZ IWW Chair, Todd DeMay, Town Planner, Inland Wetland Administrative Officer. Posted to the town's website on 2/22 and published in the Hartford Current on 2/25 and 3/3.
Thank you, Mr. DeMay. This is Kevin Ahern, Chair again. Is the applicant ready to proceed?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Please proceed.
Thank you very much. I believe before I get started, Lucy Lucker, who is the Vice President for the University for Finance and Administration, would just like to say a few words, Mr. Chairman. Lucy, if you're
Good
there.
evening. I am Lucy Lucker, Vice President for Finance Administration at the University of St. Joseph, 1678 Asylum Avenue. I am here as the university representative, and we are here to report on the completion of the project associated with the SUP 1336 Look Back 22. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to John McMeeking, landscape architect for SMRT, who spearheaded the technical side of this project, and have him speak to the compliance with the conditions.
Thank you very much, Lucy. And again, on behalf of the university, I too would like to thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee for providing this opportunity to review this important project again for the university. My name is John McMeeking. I'm a landscape architect with SMRT Architects and Engineers. In addition to Lucy from the university, we also have President Rona Free and Facilities and Grounds Director Andrew Levesque joining us should you have any questions as we proceed. So this evening, we'd like to just provide a brief overview of the project, a sort of highlight reel, if you will, review the conditions of approval and the steps the university has undertaken to adhere to those conditions. So without further ado, in May 2019, and I'm going to just have a few images here, if that's okay for you guys, just to sort of refresh you a little bit about where we are here. So in 2019, the university was granted approval from the town of West Hartford for the construction of a new multi-sport synthetic turf field with an upgraded field lighting system. The project development area was at the northwest end of the campus and occurred entirely within a previously developed area. If you may remember, this used to be the location of the old running track on campus. Albany Avenue is located to the north. If you're looking at that image, that's to the right, and Wiltshire Lane to the west through the woodlands there right in front of you. The new multi-sport field is 225 feet in width and 360 feet in length, and provides the university's growing athletic program with space for soccer, field hockey, lacrosse, as well as for passive forms of recreation such as walking, jogging, and the occasional Frisbee game, I'm sure. So that's the field there. It's got a nice run out around it. You can see in the blue, and they actually have inlaid field lines to sort of mimic the track, as this is used quite frequently, not just by students, but by faculty as well during their lunch breaks. The existing field lighting was replaced with state-of-the-art Musco light poles and fixtures. The illumination level is set to 50-foot candles, which is the recommended minimum standard level of illumination for especially for lacrosse, as dictated by the NCAA. The poles are 10.5 feet off the edge of the field and are approximately 80 feet in height with downcast cutoff LED fixtures. So these are latest, greatest, state-of-the-art athletic field light poles. Musco is certainly the worldwide leader when it comes to athletic field lighting. So we're certainly doing everything we can to stay current with trends and to make sure that these are really the best lights that we can give for the student athletes. The safety aspect is huge, and so I know the student athletes are certainly very, very happy to be able to play after dark. As I said, the illumination levels at the property lines have been measured multiple times and meet the 0-foot candle requirements. So that means there's no light trespass onto adjacent properties. A planted berm was installed from the western side of the field to assist in buffering the field activities from the adjacent properties and Wiltshire Lane. There's actually a limited amount of space between the edge of the field and the edge of the existing tree line in which to build that berm. You can see here in this image that where the edge of the trees are, the field and the berm is starting to be placed here. This is a construction photograph. So using a 3-to-1 slope, the berm is approximately 4.5 feet above the field elevation at its highest point. So that's really the highest we could get it without the soil kind of toppling back on top of itself. The berm has been planted with red pine, white spruce, and Fraser fir. The visual and auditory buffer that provides will increase as the evergreen vegetation matures. It's just going to take a little bit of time. So in an effort to respect the surrounding natural wetland ecosystems, the university installed a what's called a StormTech filter vault system. They installed this between the south side of the field and the edge of the existing woodlands to the south. The vault is in place to treat any stormwater that does not infiltrate vertically. As you guys know, synthetic turf fields, they drain incredibly quickly, with most of the drainage going vertically down. Very little horizontal drainage happening with turf fields. So this vault will pick up any infiltration that doesn't make it through the turf and actually gets into the collector pipes on either side of the field and goes into this vault system. Inside the vault is where it gets cool. It's filled with a series of canisters that it's a proprietary media within each one of these canisters, and they're targeted for specific pollutants of concern. So you can kind of pick what pollutants you're trying to target, and these canisters are filled with whatever that media is to target those pollutants. So for this project, it was zinc and it was phosphorus that we were really looking at. So the vault fills with water. The water is sucked to the middle of the canister, goes through this media, and then drains through a center tube to an under drain system, and then that goes out of the vault with pretty much clean water. From there, the stormwater daylights into the existing wet meadow, which is to the south of the field. And if and when that ever reaches a certain elevation, it then drains into an overflow structure, which is piped into the existing campus stormwater system. So there's really very little stormwater which isn't controlled as far as this field is concerned. And again, we've got sort of multiple layers of protection to make sure that the stormwater is being handled, and most importantly, is being treated properly. So those are kind of the highlights of the project. Again, the turf field itself, the improved field lighting, the berm that we built on the western side of the field, and finally the stormwater treatment solution that we all came up with. At this point, we like to review the conditions of approval that required action by the university. So let's see here. Condition number two, stormwater filter vault shall be maintained in accordance with the manufacturer's specifications. A cleaning and monitoring report shall be filed with the town once a year. The vault was inspected and cleaned in July of 2021 by a company called Savvy & Sons. They're in Amston, Connecticut. The report is included with your package of supplemental documents. The inspection showed the vault to be clean and working as designed. I do have a photo here, and I believe in your packet you can see this is as far as vaults go. This is pretty clean. So inspection again showed it to be clean and working as designed. Condition number three, water quality testing, including for the presence of zinc and for water exiting the stormwater filter vault, shall be done annually and submitted to the town. Water samples were collected in August 21, again by Savvy & Sons, and was sent by a proper chain of custody to Phoenix Environmental Laboratories. They're in Manchester, Connecticut. Samples were collected from the vault floor and also from the outlet pipe, so we could compare and contrast the two samples. Again, I mentioned earlier that proprietary media that's within those canisters is targeted to look for zinc and to treat zinc and phosphorus. So if we can, I'll just jump here to some of this lab data, and we can just take a quick look at this. But just so we're all kind of on the same page here, the EPA limit for zinc in drinking water is 5 milligrams per liter. Our test results show 0.06 milligrams per liter, which is the sample collected directly from the pipe, and 0.025 milligrams per liter, which is the sample collected directly from the floor of the filter itself. Given those numbers, this water is virtually free of any zinc. And depending on who you talk to, you could drink this water. It's clean. The EPA limit for phosphorus in drinking water is 0.05 milligrams per liter. Our test results show 0.042 milligrams per liter in the pipe and 0.041 milligrams per liter in the floor of the vault. Again, this water is virtually free of any phosphorus, and it's clean. This filter vault system is doing its job very, very nicely. As part of our discussions with the town planner in preparation for this evening, Mr. Dumais recommended that the university provide additional information on the test results of mercury. There was some language in this report referring to a percentage of mercury that was out of the acceptance range. This result was actually not from the university's water sample. So how a lot of these labs work is they have an automated testing situation that allows them to test multiple samples at the same time. They call them batches. So yes, they test in each individual sample, but they kind of put them all into the machine at the same time, or at least somewhere, depending on the lab, somewhere from the range of 20 to 50 at the same time. They do this as basically as a quality assurance, quality control technique. So they'll put all these in, and then out of, let's say, 20 of them, they'll pick one sample and they'll check what those levels are. And that's considered its baseline for those other ones within that batch that went to be tested. So for this case, the sample that was chosen was not from the university's water sample. I don't know where it's from. They don't tell you, it just has a code. But it doesn't line up with our sample numbers. So it's not from the university's sample. The university hired a hydrogeologist to review and look at these numbers, and he confirmed that what I'm telling you is in fact correct, that the baseline number that is provided is that sort of flag, if you will, is not from this water source. Condition number 4, the approximately 40 evergreen trees on and around the berm that act as a visual screen shall be maintained in good health and in the same quantity, type, and location as long as the field remains in use. I am happy to report that the majority of these trees are in very good health. The university has replaced 2 trees last spring, and they will continue to monitor every spring and not only prune, but maintain and also replace any dead trees. It's certainly important to note that it's going to take some time for these trees to grow and mature, but I assure you they will get there. And this is all evergreen vegetation that has been planted on this berm. So we are looking for a year-round screening effort, not just visually, but also to try to cut down on any noise from games and practices. Condition number 5, snow removal and maintenance plan that identifies the type of snow removal equipment to be used, and the snow stockpile areas shall be submitted to the town. Snow shall be stored on the field to the greatest extent possible. All snow is stored on the field and is not transported to other locations on campus. That doesn't happen. The university just uses a small plow to push the snow from south to north, where it is stockpiled for the winter months. The graphic site plan is included in your package of supplemental documents. Condition 6, the use of environmentally friendly turf field infill is authorized. That's just duly noted for the record. Condition number 7, the operational plan for athletic field lighting is amended to allow for an additional 5 evening events per year, so long as those are for town use. That's again duly noted for the record. At which point this concludes sort of my high-level review of the project. I'm happy to say that the field is used constantly. The student athletes are certainly very, very happy with the field, and let's say it's been an overarching success so far. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee members, for the opportunity to be here again this evening and just touch base on this important project for the university. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So this is Kevin Hearn, Chair again. Do we have questions for the applicant? I had a quick question. I'm sorry, I can't actually see Ms. Gillette on my screen, so if she has questions. I also want to note for the record that Josh Kaplan has joined us via telephone. Josh, I believe you're unmuted. So at any time, if you have questions, just jump in. Ms. Gillette, did you have your hand raised?
I was just curious about the community outreach, but I'm not sure that this presenter was in charge of that.
I can certainly speak a little bit to that. Yeah, there's been, you know, extensive outreach as we went through not only the design phase of the project, but also here kind of in this look back phase. There was actually, we met last week, and I think Vice President Lucker can certainly touch a little bit more on this, as this is an operational component.
Thank you, Vice President Lucker.
This is Vice President Lucker. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We did send out letters to all of the abutting neighbors inviting them to a meeting last Monday. We had one neighbor that did attend so that we could answer their questions and concerns. And the university is always open to feedback and wants to hear from our neighbors. We are committed to meeting all of the conditions and continuing to do so. And to try to respond to neighborhood concerns as they arise.
Ms. Gillette.
What was the one person that was there, and have you had any other feedback over the past year or so?
So I didn't hear the beginning of the question.
All right, Ms. Gillette, if you could ask that question again.
I was going to say, what did the one neighbor have to say, and have you gotten any other feedback in the year or so that the field has been in use? And I understand that you're diligent in wanting to have any response.
So your question was a little spotty, Ms. Gillette, but I think we got the gist of it. If you could take a crack at it, Vice President.
Yes, thank you. This again is Vice President Lucker. The neighbor who attended acknowledged that there was no spillover of light into their yard, but did want us to understand that the field is very lit. And so when they look at the field, it's very light. And that is a true statement. They were also concerned that sometimes there is some noise on Saturday that was a little more than they expected. But they said it wasn't a major concern. We are not aware of any issues with noise on the field, but we will be making sure that it was prior to the games where they felt when the athletes were practicing, sometimes it was a little bit loud with music, but once the game started, that stopped. The director of athletics is going to, remind the teams, both sides, to be very cognizant of the noise. It is not from any kind of sound system provided from the university. So we do not have a sound system that is creating that issue. In terms of the lights, there was a question about how often they are on and how long they are on. The lights are turned on manually, so they are only on when the field is occupied. It is, though, a fairly large field, as you would expect it to be. And it is possible that the field from any given house may look like it is not in use when the lights are on, but in fact, it is the other end of the field where the students are practicing. We do not turn them on unless it's being used. We turn them on by hand. The coaches turn the lights off when the practice or the game is complete. However, we also have a backstop with the automatic shut off of the lights at the required time, which is 8:30 Monday through Thursday and 9:30, Sunday through Thursday, and 9:30 on Friday nights and Saturday nights, just on the off chance that anyone forgets. The lights can also be turned off by an app from the coaches' phones, so the coaches can check and make sure that they have turned the lights off. So we are doing everything we can to only have the lights on at the time the field is being used for the benefit of the neighbors, but also for our, the university's benefit, as it is, of course, expensive to operate the lights.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just I guess while we're on the public comment, just a quick question for, I guess I'll start with Mr. Dumais. You guys had in the late written comments, you put together a package for us, and there's 2 emails and then a map and 3 photographs. What are the map and 3 photographs associated with? Who sent those? There was no context necessarily. I didn't know if they went with one of the emails. Sort of an annotated map indicating poor existing drainage on the left side of the map, and then pictures in the area, and then an overhead also saying the same, and then 2 photographs of pooling water.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Yes, the late items that were sent to you, there were 2 emails, as you indicated. One largely reflects what I believe the public outreach results are that Vice President Lucker just referenced, and that was one individual's comments. The second one, I believe the mapping that was attached goes with that individual's email. So there were some questions regarding drainage that they indicated on the map. There was also a third late item, and that was just an updated staff report from Mr. Pudlick that altered his original report slightly just to annotate some of the trees needed to be maintained. So those were the 3 late items.
I was impressed by Mr. Pudlick's ability to obtain a helicopter to get those photographs for us. So I really appreciate that he went above and beyond for the team. Thank you very much. Just I was trying to understand what those went with. Do we have any other questions for the applicants? Mr. Bankhorst. Gordon, I can't hear you. I don't know if anyone else can.
It would help if I demuted myself.
There it is.
So,
You'll get it right before the meeting ends.
Just one point of clarity with respect to the zinc standard that you compared to. You compared it to a drinking water standard. In fact, we should be comparing to a surface water standard, which is honestly quite a bit lower than a drinking water standard, since we're discharging into a wetland. So for the future, if we could use that, you are indeed below that level, but it is greater than an order of magnitude lower.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that comment. And yes, I did cross-check both. I suppose you're right that it should have been the more stringent of the 2, but certainly nice to know that it's under both. But thank you for that comment.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Bankhorst. Have any other questions? I very quickly I need to be reminded in terms of the maintenance schedule for how the crumb rubber is handled, insofar as it doesn't always stay on the field, and it has to be periodically refreshed. Could you just fill us in on sort of how that works, how it's collected, and if, just to let us know sort of how that's ended up? That was probably my only concern when we originally approved this.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So these fields are groomed typically probably every 3 months or so. There's sort of a groomer which attaches to like a gator, and you kind of just drive it around as sort of like a big comb, if you will. And it helps the crumb rubber and the sand sort of commingle a little bit more. What can tend to happen with the sand is with weather, it can sort of slowly over time start to settle a little bit. So just brushing and grooming the field with that kind of drive behind situation will be done probably a few times every year. The actual replacement of the infill itself, they bring in a large vacuum truck and they just suck it all up, and it goes through 2 different sieves. So the sand will separate and then the crumb rubber will separate. And then there's there's organizations now that will truck it off, and then they'll either bring in brand new infill, or it's certainly an opportunity to go with other infills. The infill itself doesn't have to be replaced very often at all. If you do regular grooming with a brush groomer, you probably don't even have to change your infill throughout the life cycle of the entire turf field. So a field like this, which is multi-sport, being used a lot, the life cycle of that turf field is probably at least 12 years. You may have to replace the infill once, but that would be it. As long as you do the regular maintenance on it. There's sort of this misbelief that synthetic turf fields are no maintenance. They're not, they're just low maintenance, right? So again, you don't have to irrigate them, you don't have to fertilize them, there's no pesticides, fungicides, anything like that. That's the beauty of them, but you do have to groom them. And the university is grooming them at least 2 to 3 times every year. So hopefully that helps.
I think it does. I think just to narrow it down to one follow-up then would be in terms of what is the rates of the crumb rubber actually washing off the field and going into the systems, and how are the systems able to catch it and filter it out?
Yes, thank you. Great question. There's actually a perimeter trench drain system around this. So periodically, I think it's every 50 feet, there's a catch basin. So you just pull the top off of the trench drain. It's actually 2 little screws. You unscrew it at each catch basin location, and you're able to pull out any leaves, it's more like pine needles and those kind of things, Mr. Chairman. You don't see a lot of, the crumb rubber does tend to move, but it's more vegetative debris that's pulled out of those trench drains than it is actual infill itself. On the west side of this field, in proximity, or just on the edge of the entire field, is a stone infiltration strip. So it provides it just provides a little bit more extra buffer before you get to the berm, before you get to the woodlands. So we've kind of got it surrounded, if you will. But these catch basins within the trench drain system, they're easy to clean out.
Thank you. I appreciate you answering my questions. Do we have any other questions from the commissioners? I just want to note that Mr. Kaplan reached out to me. He's on the line, but he's going to recuse himself from this item. All right. So seeing no questions, Mr. Dumais, do we have anyone, or I should say Mr. Goslin, do we have anyone on the line wishing to speak? We're going to move to the public comment portion of this hearing.
Mr. Chairman, with having been received and clarified that the 48 number online is Commissioner Kaplan, I
Yes.
don't believe that we have any new call-ins currently.
Thank you, Mr. Dumais. Besides the ones that you brought to us just before the meeting, do we have any additional emails that we need to review?
Mr. Chairman, there are no additional comments in our comment inbox.
Thank you. All right, so then we have then the sum total of the public comments. Before we close the hearing, though, I'd like to give the applicant one more opportunity should they need it.
I don't believe we have any other comments at this time, except to thank the commission for hearing our testimony. We appreciate your time this evening.
Thank you, Madam Vice President, and thank you to all the presenters today. Then with that, this hearing is closed. Next up then, Mr. Dumais, I believe is item number 10.
Hartford Planning and Zoning Commission legal notice. Town of West Hartford Planning and Zoning Commission, also acting as the Inland Wetland and Watercourse Agency, will hold its regular meeting at 6 p.m. on Monday, March 7th. The public meeting will be conducted exclusively in a format in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act as amended by Public Act 21-2, which authorizes municipalities to conduct public meetings virtually. The following proceedings will be convened at 6:15 p.m. or soon thereafter as the matter may be heard. 25 Dover Road, St. Thomas the Apostle School, application SUP 1019 R1, requesting approval of a special use permit for the installation of 2 shade structures on the existing playground equipment, submitted for TPC receipt on February 7th. Required public hearing was scheduled for March 7th. The application was available for public review in the Town Plan and Zoning Office Room 214, 50 South Main Street, or by visiting the town's website, or by requesting email a copy of the application at comment.tpz@westhartfordct.gov. Members of the public can view this meeting live on YouTube or on West Hartford Community Television at www.whctv.org and YouTube.com/WHCTV5. Any interested persons may participate in real time by calling 1-408-418-9388 and using the following access code: 2336-974-6105. Any interested person may also submit a written comment via email to comment.tpz@westhartfordct.gov. Kevin Ahern, TPC Chair, Todd DeMay, Town Planner, posted to the town's website 2/22, published in the Hartford Current on 2/25 and 3/3.
Thank you, Mr. Demay. Is the applicant ready to proceed?
Hi, everyone. My name is Janet Cashman. I'm the Associate Principal at St. Thomas the Apostle School and also a resident of West Hartford. And before I begin, I'd like to just publicly thank Brian Pudlick. I've never been involved in a hearing or anything with your office or commission, and he has been very helpful. So thank you. The St. Thomas the Apostle School community is interested in a special use permit to add 2 shade structures to our existing playground. St. Thomas the Apostle's playground was installed between 2004 and 2005 in 2 phases. It includes 3 small structures and 2 large structures. I can share. During a storm about 5 years ago, we had 4 large pine trees that offered shade to our playground area. And because of the moist ground, we lost those trees. This special use permit is being filed for permission to add these shade sails that will offer some shade to portions of the play area. The cool topper shades require a steel post with a deeper footing. Therefore, we will need to partially disassemble the playground structure in order to gain access to the 2 existing posts, which need to be removed. The existing posts will be removed, including the concrete footings, and disposed of off-site by our contractor. They will then proceed to dig the footing holes slightly deeper than the previous footings, set the new posts in place, pour concrete to manufacturer's specifications. Once these are in place, the contractors will then reassemble what has been undone of those posts and proceed to assemble the cool topper support structure and the canopy itself. Once those are up, they will clean up our playground area, and our students will be able to play safely and not so hot. I have some other pictures. This is more specifically what it's going to look like. We have 1 existing structure over the sandbox, but these 2 will be over the large play structure. They'll be green to match what we already have in place. And so none of the original property is going to be changed except for adding these above the playground. This is what they look like. You can see them at schools and parks in our area.
Thank you, Ms. Cashman. I just wanted to clarify, you're all finished?
I think so, yes.
Okay. All right. So do we have any questions for Ms. Cashman?
Well, I'm sorry. I did get, excuse me, Janet Cashman again. I did get
Sure.
a notice later in the day today about a neighbor that had some questions and concerns about weather-related problems with this type of system. And I did reach out to both the contractor and the playground company to find answers to those questions. The neighbor's concern had to do with since the trees had fallen, why would wouldn't we be nervous that any of these things that we're putting up could also be dangerous as far as in the windstorms that we've been seeing and the snow, and the company, which is M.E. O'Brien and Sons. The consultant told us that the cool toppers are designed to withstand 90 mile per hour wind speeds and 5 PSF snow loads per International Building Code. He said that they're installed quite deep into the ground and integrated into the structure, therefore they're not going anywhere. He said the hardware is stainless steel and comes with thread lock, and that they would need power tools to remove the hardware, and that no wind speeds would be able to loosen that hardware. He also just wanted us to know, to hopefully alleviate any nerves about the project, that he's installed hundreds of these structures across the planet, and he's never heard of any parts flying loose or causing harm.
Thank you, Ms. Cashman. Do we have any questions for the applicant? I have a procedural question for the planner. Wow, just that I can't remember whether we talked about this, just you and I, Todd, or if there was a discussion last month about it. But insofar as thresholds of review for certain types of applications, such as this, and I always feel a little bad having someone from a school spend their nights with us, as fun and as entertaining as we are. But I also want to make sure that we are being consistent across the town in how we review these types of things. But Mr. DeMay, is there any potential discussion about these? Because we had a shade structure, I think, 2 or 3 months ago of similar. Similarly, it was the impact was relatively low.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, we discussed that actually at our last meeting when you received this application. I think it was the general consensus of the commission to encourage staff to find ways to explore some type of levels of review for more minor applications such as this. So we plan on doing that and bringing back something for your review in the coming future.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Sorry, I'll just repeat. Do we have any questions for Ms. Cashman before we move on to public comment? Okay. So we do, as Ms. Cashman mentioned, we did get a late comment, which it sounds like Ms. Cashman has addressed. Mr. Goslin, do we have anyone on the line?
Mr. Chairman, doing a quick scroll through our participants, I do not believe that we have any call-in participants.
Thank you. Mr. DeMay, do we have any late emails?
Mr. Chairman, we do not.
Thank you, Mr. DeMay. All right, then that would conclude the public comment portion. Ms. Cashman, do you have anything further before we close this hearing?
Only to say I appreciate that that this is a small addition that we're doing on our playground, and that but I also, just as someone who's never been to this, appreciate all of the thought that goes into every decision, and I think it shows what a great town we live in. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cashman. And it's always good to start a presentation praising Brian Pudlick, because that's that goes right to our heart. Well, good. Then with that, this hearing is closed. Next up is item number 11, Mr. DeMay.
West Hartford Plan and Zoning Commission legal notice. The Town of West Hartford Plan and Zoning Commission, also acting as the Inland Wetland and Watercourse Agency, will hold its regular meeting at 6 p.m. on Monday, March 7th, 2022. The public hearing and meeting will be conducted exclusively in a format in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act as amended by Public Act 21-2, which authorizes municipalities to conduct public meetings virtually. Following proceedings will convene at 6:15 p.m. or soon thereafter as the matter may be heard. 245 Prospect Avenue, application SUP 1375 of Carrie Olson on behalf of Planet Fitness and Prospect Plaza Improvements LLC, requesting approval of a special use permit to allow for 24-hour operations of the fitness facility pursuant to section 177-37-1 of the zoning ordinances. submitted for TPC receipt on February 7th. Required public hearing to be scheduled for March 7th. The application is available for public review in the Town Planning and Zoning Office, room 214, Town Hall, 50 South Main Street, or by visiting the town's website, or via email request to comment.tpc@westhartfordct.gov. Members of the public can view the meeting live on YouTube or West Hartford Community Television at whctv.org or YouTube/WHCTV5. Any persons may participate in real time by calling 1-408-418-9388 and using the following access code 2336-974-6105. Any interested person may submit written comment via email to comment.tpc@westhartfordct.gov. Kevin Ahern, TPC Chair, Todd Dumay, Town Planner, posted to the town's website on 2/22 and published in the Hartford Current on 2/25 and 3/3. Mr. Chairman, I would like to point there is a late item associated with this application as well, and it is just a clarification on part of the applicant's request regarding signage that is withdrawn. So with that, I'll allow the applicant to proceed with their presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Dumay. This is Kevin Ahern, Chairman. Is the applicant ready to proceed?
Yes, Chairman.
Please.
Thank you. Good evening, Chairman Ahern and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Let me begin by praising Brian Pudlick and Todd Dumay for, I'm going to tell you, they've been incredible. They really have throughout the process. And so I echo the accolades. I represent Prospect Plaza Improvements, LLC, and DLC Management Company in this application, which is essentially for a special permit to allow a proposed tenant for the Prospect Plaza to operate on a 24-hour basis. And that proposed tenant is Planet Fitness. With me this evening is Greg Oceans. He is Vice President of Development for DLC. They're an affiliated management company with Prospect Plaza Improvements, LLC. I also have with me this evening Candace Cole, who is the Director of Real Estate for Planet Fitness. While, again, this is a special permit request, I just want to be clear that the installation of a fitness center at this plaza is a permitted use under existing regulations. And again, all we're looking to is to expand their ability to operate between the hours of 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. under section 177-42A5 of your regulations and section 177-31-1A. So in a nutshell, the criteria for approving a special permit use for overnight operations, according to your regulations, really deal with the anticipated impacts of the application on existing and future development. So again, to be clear, this is a retail plaza that is pre-existing. It is abutted to the north by recreational fields, to the east and south by other significant retail uses, to the west by multifamily apartment complexes, which are buffered not only by landscaping, but also by significant parking areas. The proposed 24-hour use of the property will have no negative impact on the orderly development of the town in this area, but is proposed to occupy a currently vacant area of the Prospect Plaza. I will be clear that there is going to be some shifting of tenants. So the proposed Planet Fitness will occupy a space currently occupied, but that occupant will be moving to other vacant space. But as you can see from staff comments, the proposal is that Planet Fitness occupy the most westerly unit of the Prospect Plaza. There are no exterior property construction activities proposed. So allowing for the overnight use will not hinder the use of adjacent properties. There's ample parking and access to the property, again, as it is pre-existing And indeed, the allowance of operations between 2 and 5 a.m. will not have a negative impact on parking or access for obvious reasons. There will not be competing access to the site during normal business hours or for parking spaces. Moreover, this type of a 24-hour use for a fitness center has been identified as this Planning and Zoning Commission has previously approved. The same types of requests for special permit overnight uses as the staff comments indicate for both Anytime Fitness and for Edge Fitness. Ironically, both of those uses, like the use at issue here, are located within an existing retail plaza. There is one additional criterion that the Planning and Zoning Commission has to consider when it comes to 24-hour use operations under 17737 1B, and that is determining whether that is evaluating, I should say, whether the safety of both the use and the site during the late night hours are appropriate. For that, I'm going to turn it over to Candace Cole from Planet Fitness, who's going to describe for the commission what safety features they offer.
Hello, my name is Candace Cole. I'm the Director of Real Estate for ECP. We are the second largest franchisee for Planet Fitness. We have just quickly over 113 locations across the US and in Western Canada, with the bulk of our portfolio in Connecticut. We're very excited to get the deal done and get our club open in West Hartford and become part of the community here and offer this service to the overall neighborhood and the community. As far as the services or the safety and security that we offer, we do a comprehensive training for all new employees and an on-hand manual that goes through any type of medical emergency plans, building security measures, managing any hostile members. There's a panic button at the desk. That employees are able to trigger if there is any type of emergency that will go directly to emergency services. We have cameras that are in the club and cameras that face out into the parking lot to increase that security. The parking lot will be fully illuminated at all times, which I believe it currently is, and that will continue to be so. We'll have 2 employees that'll be working the overnight shift. Typically 2 employees, one that's working the desk and one that works on maintenance and cleaning the club. We have not had the need for additional security in any of our other clubs, any of our other 113 clubs that we have operating currently. We feel that, it's a proven system. Planet Fitness is, the number 1 in the overall industry as far as offering 24-hour fitness and availability to members. So like I said, we are excited to become part of the community and offer these services to West Hartford.
Thank you, Candace. At this juncture, before I conclude, I'm just wondering if, Greg, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Thanks, Carrie. Greg Oceans, Vice President of Redevelopment for DLC. I just wanted to thank the Commission for hearing our application and to just state that we're very excited to welcome Planet Fitness to the shopping center, and we think they're going to be a great addition to the community and most certainly to our shopping center.
And I would just add, again, like the other 24-hour fitness centers that this commission has approved, this provides obviously some significant options, recreational and fitness options for individuals who live and work in the area, just as you have identified in approving both, the Anytime Fitness and the Edge Fitness, having the multifamily residences abutting the property. I mean, it's walkability. They can, access the club 24/7. I think we all appreciate that in this day and age, work schedules have shifted significantly. Greg and I were teasing each other the other night saying, who would want to work out at 2 a.m.? But, you have people who work second shift. You have, people with childcare issues, and sometimes those hours are the most conducive to people for being able to follow through with their fitness programs. So it's obviously an integral part of Planet Fitness's business model. We hope that you will approve it so that we can fill some empty space at Prospect Plaza, which is obviously of benefit to the entire community and to West Hartford as a whole. And with that, I will turn it over and ask if the commission members have any questions.
Thank you, Attorney Olson, Ms. Cole, and Mr. Oceans. Do we have questions from the commission? Ms. Gillette, and then Ms. Gomes.
Here's 24 hour. I noticed in your layout, you have tanning rooms, you have hydro rooms, and you have massage. That's all within the lounge, but you'll have only 2 employees overnight. It's one thing for somebody to on a bicycle with frontage windows that look into the exercise area. And it's another thing to have massages in the back at 3 o'clock in the morning. Can you tell me what the plan is for those uses?
I'm gonna defer to Ms. Cole on that and let her respond.
Absolutely. And I think I understood your question. You broke up a little bit in there. So if I'm not answering correctly, please set me straight. So for our massage, there are actually massage chairs. And in the area where there's tanning and the hydro massage and the massage chairs, that's our black card area. So that section off is not manned any time of day. It's not actually a person giving a massage. It's a massage chair. If you are a black card member, you have access to that area. You could stay in the lounge. You could use the tanning bed or booth or the massage chair if you would like.
A lot better to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gillette. I'm going to transition to Ms. Gomes. Do you have a question, Ms. Gomes?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, I was just wanted to confirm that no music would be playing outdoors, particularly in the overnight hours.
Yes, just to address that, and I'll have Greg follow up on that, but there is a requirement as a tenant of this plaza not to have any noise leave the actual tenant space. Obviously, it becomes an impact problem on the other uses in the plaza, and they have agreed to abide by that. So there should be no noise that emanates from outside of the tenant space. But I will turn it over to Greg to confirm.
Yes, Carrie. Simply stated, that's a condition that we have in our leases throughout the shopping center for all of our tenants, for the benefit of all the tenants.
I'd like to also add that we don't offer, spin classes or exercise type classes that have, that real thumping techno beat like a lot of other fitness places do. We do have music inside of the club. We will abide to the decibel levels. And we don't have, those classes with somebody on the headset hollering at you to pedal faster.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I do have one more question, if I may. My only other question, I apologize if you did answer this during the presentation, but the audio was a little bit spotty. Is this just an open entry overnight, or do you have to swipe a membership card to get into the club in the overnight hours?
You're correct. They have to swipe in, but I will defer to Ms. Cole to explain.
So members do need to register. They have a card to register, but that card does not unlock the front door. There will be somebody at the desk, and they will enter into the space and they will swipe their card for access into the club. But it's not a card entry, so to speak.
Understood.
But it will alert staff if somebody comes in and cannot swipe in and is not a member, that there may be an
Yes.
issue. And as we point out, there are other security measures in place, panic buttons and the like, so that if somebody comes in and is not eligible to swipe in, then staff is properly trained on how to proceed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gomes. Do we have any other questions? I'll jump in with my question. The first time this was approved, it was a long meeting because we were all new to this, and this was a very big deal for us to approve a 24-hour business that wasn't like a CVS. And it had mainly to do, and this was the one in Bishop's Corner, with the signage. And in this particular case, it faced directly towards the residential zone. I don't, at least as it's currently set up with the hibachi and the Prospect Pizza, it all faces towards Kane Street. Is that going to be maintained here? Okay, I see a lot of none against.
Yes, it is. And I have to apologize for any confusion about asking for a special permit regarding the signage. It was my understanding that Planet Fitness had been talking directly with town staff and that there was a understanding that that was required. So I apologize again for any confusion there, and that was obviously withdrawn. But the signage for Planet Fitness will be facing Prospect. It will be facing the highway. There will not be any signage for Planet Fitness facing the residential units that are located to the west or either behind the building or facing to the east, other than what pre-exists at the plaza.
Thank you, Council. And I actually just noted that I was looking at this. I had to remind myself, even though I was probably down Kane Street 2 days ago, the side, just for the commissioner's benefit, the side of the building facing the residential areas is just a wall. There's no windows. There's no, and the entrance on the corner, there is, an entrance facing the, sort of an opening facing, but mainly it looks like people coming from the parking go directly in. So
correct. And again, if you look at the west side of the property, there's a very large parking area for the abutting residential multifamily apartments, which is also buffered with landscaping. So, I mean, the two things are, one, we would argue it's clearly buffered on that side and obviously was approved already by this commission, or it wouldn't be there. The plaza wouldn't be there. So all we're doing is installing a use in a vacant space. But the other really neat thing about this is that you have this multifamily residential use where literally residents could walk and get their fitness workout. Now, maybe they don't want to walk at 2 a.m, but I'm just saying overall. And again, there's ample parking, ample access, pre-existing plaza. We're not looking to expand anything other than to allow an already permitted use to operate between 2 and 5. And at this point, this would be the only entity at the plaza operating during those hours. So there's not going to be any impact on parking or access. And as we pointed out, no impacts vis-a-vis noise, light, or otherwise by allowing this overnight use. But it is obviously a critical component of Planet Fitness's, plans and their business model, and is a critical approval to them installing themselves at Prospect Plaza.
thank you. Do we have any other questions from the commission? All right. Seeing none, then we will move on to the public comment portion. Now I noticed let's see, do we have any written comments that came in? I didn't see it on this one. Mr. Dumais?
Mr. Chairman, we do not.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. Mr. Goslin, anyone on the phone?
Mr. Chairman, I see no call-in users.
Thank you, Mr. Goslin. All right, then we have no public comments on this application. Does the applicant wish to say anything further before we close the hearing?
I have nothing to add, but I do need to defer to Mr. Oceans and Ms. Cole before we close out? And it looks like Ms. Cole would like to say something.
Again, I would really like to repeat the fact that we are excited to be part of the community to offer these services. The team has been great as far as helping us get to this point. As Carrie had mentioned, it is critical for us and a requirement of our franchisor that we're able to operate the 24 hours. So we're hopeful to get this done. Thank you very much for the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I as well have nothing to add except that thank you again for your time, and we think Planet Fitness is going to be a great enhancement to our shopping center and to West Hartford in general.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Attorney Olson, Ms. Cole, and Mr. Oceans. Then with that, this hearing is closed. Mr. Dumais, next up is item number 12 and 13.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And with your permission, I'll read the legal notices together as they're related applications.
Yes, please. Thank you, Mr. Dumais.
West Hartford Planning and Zoning Commission legal notice. The Town of West Hartford Planning and Zoning Commission, also acting as the Inland, Wetland, and Watercourse Agency, will hold its regular meeting at 6 p.m. on Monday, March 7th, 2022. The public hearing and meeting will be conducted exclusively in a format in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act as amended by Public Act 21-2, which authorizes municipalities to conduct public meetings virtually. Following proceedings will convene at 6:15 p.m. or there soon after, as the matter may be heard on the following. 300 Bloomfield Avenue, New England Jewish Academy, application Inland Wetland 1169, requesting approval of an inland wetland and watercourse permit to conduct certain regulated activities which may have an adverse impact on a wetland regulated area. The applicant proposes the construction of a new addition, new outdoor play area, and associated site work in support of an expanded educational programs for the pre-K to 12th grade. Proposed work is partially within a 150-foot upland review area. No direct wetland impacts are proposed. Submitted for agency receipt on February 7th, determined to be potentially significant and set for public hearing on March 7th. 300 Bloomfield Avenue, New England Jewish Academy, application SUP 1150, requesting approval of a special use permit for the construction of a new addition, new outdoor play area, and associated site work in support of an expanded educational programs from the pre-K to 12th grade. Submitted for TPC receipt on February 7th. Required public hearing scheduled for March 7th. The applications are available for public review in the Town Planning and Zoning Office, room 214, Town Hall, 50 South Main Street, West Hartford, Connecticut, or by visiting the town's website or by email request. Members of the public can view the meeting live on YouTube or West Hartford Community Television at www.hctv.org or YouTube/WHCTV5. Any interested person may also call in and participate real time by calling 1-408-418-9388 and using the following access code: 2336-974-6105. Any interested person may also submit a written comment via email to comment.tpc@westhartfordct.gov. Kevin Ahern, TPC Chair, Todd Dumais, Town Planner, posted to the town's website on 2/22 and published in the Hartford Current on 2/25 and 3/3.
Thank you, Mr. Dumais. Is the applicant ready to proceed?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman. This is Robin Pearson. I'm an attorney with the firm of Alter and Pearson in Glastonbury, Connecticut, and I represent the applicant, New England Jewish Academy, Inc. I just want to start out by noting that the sign affidavit attesting to the required sign posting period has been provided to the staff today. The applications pending before you tonight are to conduct a regulated activity within the upland review area and a special use permit to allow expansion of the existing high school building and operations at 300 Bloomfield Avenue to incorporate programming for grades pre-K to grade 8 under one roof with the high school. The building will be expanded by 6,336 square feet, and internal changes are also proposed to be made to the existing building to accommodate the expanded academy programming. There are also associated exterior changes, site work, including a new outdoor play area for the younger students that will be coming under the Academy's purview, and there will also be 5 additional parking spaces added for a total of 60 parking spaces on the site. There are no direct wetland impacts proposed. However, you have decided to hold a public hearing on the basis that the proposal is potentially significant with regard to those impacts. And you also are obviously holding a public hearing on the special use permit. With your concurrence, we would propose to combine those two hearings and do a comprehensive presentation on the proposed expansion. We understand, of course, you'll be voting separately, but this will expedite the proceedings tonight. And we also request, as you have done for the other applications tonight, that you reserve your questions until the end so we can keep it moving for you and for anybody who might be listening from the public. Our format is as follows. We're going to start off with Mr. Zablotsky, Ted Zablotsky, who is head of the school building committee. He's going to discuss the background behind the Academy's decision to pursue this expansion and why it is so important to the school's mission. He'll be followed by Mike Segan. You know Mike, he's with Richter and Segan, landscape architects, and he and their firm is the project designer for the expanded school. He'll go through the project's location within the context of the neighborhood, and we'll review site design and the modifications to the existing school. He'll also talk about neighborhood outreach that has taken place, and will provide an overview of the regulated activities that are proposed. He'll be followed by Keith Goodrow, who is our civil engineer. He's with Fuss and O'Neill, and he will go through briefly drainage and utility impacts with the proposed applications. He'll be followed by Michael Soares, who is our registered soil scientist and wetland scientist. He too is with Fuss and O'Neill. He's going to talk about his confirmation of the existing wetland mapping on the premises. He did conduct and will describe for you his wetland evaluation and his impact assessment of the proposed site work. He'll be followed by Mark Bertucci. Mark is a traffic engineer with Fuss and O'Neill, and he's going to go over quickly an analysis of the traffic implications with this proposal and the sightline impact question that was raised by staff. He'll be followed by Adam Palmer, who is our project engineer with Phase Zero Design. He will describe the architectural highlights of the proposed addition. And at the end, I will briefly summarize compliance with your regulations with regard to both the inland wetland application and the special use permit. Before I turn it over to the team, however, I just want to remind you of the prior permitting history that has taken place with regard to the existing high school at 300 Bloomfield Avenue. Back in 2009, November 4, 2009, this wetland body approved a amended map amendment. As I recall at that time, we added additional wetlands to what was in place for your, according to the town's wetland map. A wetland permit was also issued on November 4, 2009 for the regulated activities associated with construction of the high school as it currently exists. The same evening, you granted a special use permit to add to the building that was previously owned by the University of Hartford in order to accommodate the high school use on the premises. Since then, the school has operated on the site. A variance was recently approved by the Zoning Board of Appeals in West Hartford, allowing a maximum horizontal dimension with the addition applied to the existing building of 302.5 feet. We argued, and the Zoning Board of Appeals concurred, that this dimension is in keeping with other institutional and educational facilities in the area, and that the variance was a worthy thing to grant for the benefit of the school without having any detrimental impacts to the neighborhood. Since then, and that was granted on January 19th, since then the certificate of variance has been recorded on the land records. And now, as you know, the wetland permit is before you this evening also. As far as staff sign-offs, we have had positive reviews by various town agencies. The first one is by the West Hartford Bloomfield Health District, and it indicated in its transmission to you on March 4th that it reviewed the revisions for the inland wetland and SUP application and has no issue with the revisions. You also have in your file a transmittal from Dwayne Martin dated March 4 as the traffic engineer, in which he says we find the application to be acceptable. And you have a transmittal from the planning department dated March 4, in which the staff says all previously issued staff review comments have been satisfactorily addressed. There is an outstanding, I believe, unless I double checked this evening and did not see that we had a final sign off from the engineering department on the stormwater issues that were raised. I'm not sure if that has been updated or not, but in looking at the questions and our responses to that section of the engineering department, we have absolutely no issue with being able to meet their requirements as we have set forth in our response, and expect that there won't be any issues, but I'm going to have to leave that for staff to respond to in terms of our presentation this evening. So with that, I'd like to invite Mr. Zablotsky to say a few words to the commission.
Thanks, Robin. I live at 44
Breaking
Miami
up,
Road.
Ted, you're breaking up. Is there anything we can do to fix that?
Sure. Is that any better?
I think so.
Great, thank you. I want to thank the chair and commissioners for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. I just wanted to give you a quick background of who we are, not just what we're trying to do. We have been, as Robin at 3 years, operating at a high school. I think we have a good neighbor. I think it's a good neighborhood. Consistent youth through that. That's who we are. We're 20 years old. The feeder school that was, or is Bloomfield Road, is over 70 years old. It's a natural art school. Great number of those graduates come to the school. There are lots of reasons that are investing for these two schools, which we do every year. We have now sold our building, and we want to incorporate one school on campus. There's no way to physically put grades in the existing building. Doing the best we can, or we will be doing this addition, but we need this to continue the state-of-the-art program that we look forward to continue to be the good neighbors for very long.
Mr. Chair, I know that, at least from what I could hear, that Mr. Zablotsky was continuing to break up. I would just like to add a few points because I don't seem to be having the same technical issues. Just to reiterate what he said, the school has operated at its current location since January 12, 2011. It's been part of that neighborhood for over 10 years then. And to the best of their knowledge, they've been good neighbors. When an issue was brought to their attention, they have dealt with it and will continue to work with the neighbors, as you will hear through our presentation about the outreaches that has taken place. Approximately 2 years ago, the Hebrew High School of New England merged with the Siegel Hebrew Academy in Bloomfield, which is a pre-K through grade 8 school. And that's when they became the New England Jewish Academy. And with approval of this application, they'll realize their goal of being able to bring all the grades together under one roof on the Bloomfield Avenue campus. You may have heard Ted say that they've sold the Bloomfield building. This is imperative for them, and the benefits of doing this combination and expansion at 300 Bloomfield Avenue has numerous benefits for the academy and for the community in terms of impacts. This is the minimal change to the building that can be done to be able to have this combined school program work efficiently. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Mike Segan, who is our project designer and has worked closely with Ted through the development of this plan, and he can go into some more detail on the particulars. Mike?
Thanks, Robin. Good evening. I'm Mike Segan with Richter and Segan. We're the landscape architects, as Robin mentioned, on the project team. Josh, great, if you can put that up. The Jewish Academy's 11.9 acre site is located at 300 Bloomfield Avenue. You can see here. This context map shows the surrounding neighborhood context. Along Bloomfield Avenue are other institutional uses, including Sunrise Assisted Living and the Zacks campus, which includes both a community center and a health center. The surrounding residential neighborhoods are to the north, south, and east of the parcel and are buffered by a heavily wooded area and the Park River between the school and many of the residences. I've been fortunate over the years to be involved with the project. I'm very familiar with both the site and surrounding neighborhood, having worked on the 2009 design and town approvals, including I think was a successful community outreach process that include both neighborhood and community meetings. That neighborhood outreach has continued through this current application and has resulted in the addition of an extensive buffer plantings, which I'll go through in more detail later. Next, Josh. This is the survey of the property, simply from 30,000 feet, showing the existing school parking and site improvements that were constructed in 2010. Most of the construction on the site is in that southern portion or right side as far as this is concerned. North is kind of left, diagonally to the left, but pretty much to the left on all the drawings you're going to be seeing. That southern portion is really what we're going to focus on in the next slide. And you'll see the development is as close up to Bloomfield Avenue as can be. This is an enlargement of that southern portion of the property, showing the existing and proposed conditions at a larger scale. The existing school building and the carriage house that was preserved from the original estate are shown in the beige color. All the new or proposed improvements are colored beyond the beige color of the existing buildings. The balance of the site not colored is to remain as existing, which is most of the parking lot and front yard landscaping along Bloomfield Avenue. The area south of the school towards Sunny Reach neighborhood will remain as is, except for the buffer plantings that we've added for the neighbors. The key changes in the site plan include that new addition that's shown in kind of a terracotta color to the north of the existing school. The site also includes an outdoor play area just north of the addition. It also includes outdoor classrooms and educational gardens just behind the school. And new proposals include landscaping in front of the addition and in front of the play area. A new stormwater basin to accommodate these new improvements is located just north of the existing stormwater detention on the edge of the woods. There are 5 more parking spaces proposed in the existing parking lot. Other than that, there's no changes to the entry into the site, the parking lot layout, the drop off, and overall traffic circulation. The new addition is about 63 166 square feet. It was sited to the north of the existing building, away from the Sunny Reach neighbors, and stepped back from the Bloomfield Avenue. The architecture is well designed, which I think you'll see when Adam presents the addition architecture shortly. The play area was added for the pre-K through 5th graders that are coming into the school, and has different levels of appropriate age level play structures. A retaining wall was added on the north side of the play area. This reduces the length of the fill slope and keeps it back from the 100-year flood line. It also allows for more green between the wall and the woods edge and the wetlands. This area was enlarged and modified and enhanced based on a really early meeting that I had with town staff and the input we got at that meeting. Next, please. The cross hatching on this plan shows the amount of activity in the 100-foot regulated area. There are no activities or disturbances directly in the wetlands. There's approximately 1.3 acres of activity in the regulated area. However, 80% or most of that activity is in areas previously developed for the original school construction. The building addition and most of the play area are located in an area of an existing paved basketball court, which will be removed. And what really this helps with is it reduces the net additional amount of impervious surface that's part of this application. Next, please. The colored portion of the activity in the upland review area is shown on the left. I'm not sure what that color is, a brownish kind of color, is the activity that's beyond the original limit of disturbance from the 2010 construction. This is 0.27 acres, or about 20% of the total activity in the regulated area. The activity along the woods edge to the south of the school, which is colored in green, is solely related to the buffer plantings requested by the neighbors. Next, please. This is the planting plan for the project. There are 3 basic components to the plan. First, the landscaping around the new addition, play area, and outdoor classrooms, which consists of additional trees, shrubs, and ground cover. The second component is the native plantings and native seed mixes on the slope and along the woods edge north of the play area and in and around the new stormwater basin and along the woods edge in this area as well. The third area of landscape planting is the extensive buffer plantings that were added along the woods edge south of the existing building and extending almost to the Bloomfield Avenue. These were a result of the neighborhood outreach effort. Next, Josh. Our neighborhood outreach effort involved notifying the property owners within a 200-foot radius. The effort included sending a packet of information describing the proposed changes and an invitation to a virtual meeting to discuss the proposed changes. As a result of that meeting, there was only concern expressed by a few neighbors along the north side of Sunny Reach, where their backyards actually face directly into the site through the woods towards the building's south elevation. We met each one of these neighbors in their backyards to see their views into the site and document and photograph the conditions there. Based on these site visits and our discussion with the neighbors, we prepared a detailed plan and reviewed the plantings with the neighbors in a follow-up virtual meeting. We also have had some miscellaneous additional correspondence with the neighbors answering the questions. As it turns out, there are concerns related not to the proposed addition as part of this application, which we intentionally located to the north side of the building and away from the Sunny Reach neighborhood. But their concern related to the impact of the construction of the school back in 2010. Regardless of what the concerns related to, the Academy wanted to respond and be good neighbors, and so we have. Next, please. This aerial perspective shows the extensive woodland that exists between the school and the surrounding residences. It's an effective buffer for most of the surrounding residences year-round. However, for those few homes on Sunny Reach that I just described, when the leaves are off the trees, you have filtered views into the site, and actually you can see some of the traffic along Bloomfield Avenue. Their view is identified by those arrows that come in from the direction of where they're looking in from through the woods. Next, please. So after meeting on each of the properties and then back at the school site, it was agreed to locate the buffer plantings along this woods edge at the south of the school, extending almost to Bloomfield Avenue. This would screen the views of the south side of the building facing the homes closest on Sunny Reach, as well as the traffic, screening the traffic that they have glimpses of along Bloomfield Avenue. You'll see the location of the new addition was again intentionally to the north side of the existing building shown here, away from that Sunny Reach neighborhood, which are our closest neighbors. Next, please. This enlargement of the proposed buffer plantings was reviewed with the neighbors. It's exactly what was submitted as part of the plan to the town. We literally reviewed each type of plant and their location, as well as planting schedule that specifies the size at the time of installation. So we really went through this in detail. They also wanted to see photographs and understand what the mature sizes of the plants would be. If you go to the next one, Josh. So we showed the neighbors the images of each of the plants that make up the buffer. And there's a reason for siting each one of these plants in different locations, depending on the shade, sun conditions, and the exposure. So we went through all this and they were pleased at the scale and size of the materials at maturity. We also made a commitment that the buffer would be installed at the earliest planting season that is feasible, and that will depend on when the construction mobilization occurs and plant availability. This could be as early as late summer, early fall of this year. So we intend to work that out just as quickly as possible on the site. Next, please, Josh. So that concludes the overview of the site design. I'd be happy to answer any questions at the conclusion of the presentation. And I want to turn it over to Keith, who will discuss stormwater management and utilities. Keith.
Hi, everyone. Keith Goodrow, Fuss & O'Neill, civil engineer out of Manchester, Connecticut. And can you go to the next slide, please, Josh? CU101. Yeah, thank you. So what we did is we designed the drainage system to pick up, to account for the drainage of the stormwater management system. And then we decided to design the detention basin to account for the addition of the building and the playground area. The basin is approximately 5,200 square feet of volume. And then that is so we can match peak flows from existing condition. We're actually taking some water off the existing detention basin there by picking up the roof leaders from about half the existing building and putting it into the new detention system. We're actually adding to a hydrodynamic separator to account for water quality flow. And I think, yeah. And I guess lastly, I just want to mention that we're showing the sanitary line where it is for the maximum impact that could potentially have for the site. We're still coordinating that with MDC, but that's the max impact it would have on the site. And yeah, I guess now I'll turn it over to Michael to discuss the wetland impacts.
Thank you, Keith. My name is Michael Soares. I'm a registered soil scientist and wetland scientist with Fuss & O'Neill. So what you're looking at here is the erosion and sediment control plan. The thicker green line is the wetland delineation, and the dashed green line is the upland review limit. So just for context. So this site was originally delineated and reported on by the BSC group in 2006. I returned to the site on October 9th, 2019 to verify that delineation. All my findings were consistent with the flagging and the delineation that they had performed. And so I redelineated that, hung that flagging, and recorded those locations. Essentially what we have here is, our project area is in between two water courses mainly. We have the north branch of the Park River to the east, and kind of to the north, it's flowing easterly and then southerly around the existing school building. And then we also have an unnamed, also another perennial water course coming in from under Bloomfield Avenue and then connecting into the Park River. Along some sections of both of those water courses, we have some inland wetlands that are also regulated areas. They're predominantly floodplain areas, which are regulated in Connecticut, and there are some small pockets of non-floodplain wetlands in that area. The overall system here is a forest, either sort of a red maple swamp forest or more uplands as we get up these banks. As we move farther down the Park River, it gets quite steep. In the kind of the east of where the project will be conducted and north of it, it's flatter, but it's a well-vegetated, very established, and diverse in its structure. And I say that because, plant communities that are diverse in structure and are well-established have a buffering capacity to handle impacts. And I don't necessarily mean the impacts of the project. I just mean it's a stable system that will be able to thrive and survive there for quite some time. Part of my assessment of the wetland delineation when I verified it back in August was also a functions and values assessment. In my report, I identified two primary functions of the wetlands, which were groundwater recharge and flood flow alteration, which are the main functions that floodplain systems provide. I also identified, or the assessment process that we use also identified secondary functions and values, those being sediment, nutrient, and toxicant removal, production export, which is the ability of a wetland to create food sources that can then be exported to other habitat areas. And then this area also was a secondary function for wildlife habitat. And it also came in as a secondary function for having an educational, scientific, or recreational value. And that's not common. That really has to do with its proximity to a school that is growing and expanding K through 12 system. And so having the proximity of the school here makes it an additional value, which you don't see very often. As has been said a couple of times already, none of the proposed project is in the inland wetlands. Everything is in the uplands surrounding the wetlands. A fair bit is in the upland review area. Once these plans were in a more complete draft form in December, I did an impact assessment looking at how the proposed plan may or may not have a significant impact on the regulated resources that I've already discussed. It was my assessment that as long as the erosion and sedimentation control plan is followed, and that other guidance that comes from Connecticut's, stormwater guidance published in 2004, I believe, that everything here is not likely to have a significant impact, provided that those ENS, erosion and sedimentation control measures, are followed and maintained. And also that certain conditions that we all, I think, know to be problematic, which are mostly that any bare soil or stockpiles or unconsolidated soils have a chance to shed sediment downslope. If all the ENS controls are maintained and functioning properly, I don't see anything here that would cause a significant impact to the resources that were delineated. So with that, I will pass it on to Mark Bertucci. Thank you.
Great. Good evening. And I'm Mark Bertucci, Senior Transportation Engineer, also at Fuss & O'Neill in Manchester. I'm a registered professional engineer in Connecticut and a professional traffic operations engineer as well. We did prepare a traffic impact study dated December 2021 and also issued a response to traffic comments letter dated March 1st. So just want to briefly describe our findings for you this evening. So orient you again to the site here. It's located on Bloomfield Avenue, which is a state road on the east side of Bloomfield Avenue. It's Route 189. The existing site driveway, which will remain in its current configuration, is located about 750 feet to the northwest of the intersection with Route 185, which is Simsbury Road. That's a signalized intersection. So as part of our traffic study, we did conduct turning movement counts during the morning and afternoon school peak hours back in October of 2019. We counted the site driveway intersection as well as the intersection of 189 at 185. And the counts indicated the school peak hours were 7:30 to 8:30 in the morning and 2:15 to 3:15 in the afternoon. So these were the hours that we analyzed. So the counts were done, as I mentioned, in 2019. So to grow them to the baseline or the design year, which we expect to be 2023, we used a growth rate of 0.6% per year, which was provided by the DOT. As far as the traffic that will be generated by the school expansion, we understand that this expansion is going to be associated with an expected increase in student enrollment. There's currently 47 students there. Expected increase will be an additional 73 students. So for the traffic generation we can expect from those additional students, we used a simple proportion. We have the existing traffic counts that we did. For the 47 students that are there today, it generates 30 trips in the morning peak hour and 20 trips in the afternoon peak hour. So with the additional 73 students, we're projecting an additional 47 trips in the morning peak hour and an additional 31 trips in the afternoon school peak hour. So we went ahead and we conducted an analysis, a capacity analysis at our study intersections to determine the impact of this traffic increase. So we added the traffic generation from the expansion to the background baseline volumes to obtain the combined or the build condition volumes. And we compared the before versus the after scenarios. So at the traffic signal of Route 185 and 189, that intersection will maintain acceptable level of service D operations or better in the peak hours. There is no reduction in level of service at that intersection as a result of the expansion. At the site driveway itself, the turns into the site from Bloomfield Avenue are operating efficiently at level service A, and that does not change. The traffic exiting the site does experience some delay in the peak hours, as it does today. Operates at a level service E and F. But I did want to note that those conditions of delay really are relegated to about a 10 to 15 minute spike in the morning and the afternoon peak hours, and it clears pretty quickly there. Those delayed vehicles are queued on the site driveway. They do not impact traffic operations on Bloomfield Avenue. And we did note the signal to the south at 185 does provide gaps in the traffic to enable vehicles to exit the site in the peak hours. The queuing is about roughly 2 to 4 vehicles at its max. I did discuss this with Dwayne Martin, Director of Community Development, who reviewed this from a traffic engineering perspective, and he agreed that the queues were short-lived and did not warrant any sort of widening of the site driveway. Any widening of the driveway really the benefits would not be worth the cost of widening the driveway, and it would also result in elimination of or removal of the trees that line that driveway today. So really did not warrant any widening there, and he concurred with that and issued a memo, as Robin Pearson had noted, that he had no further comments or concerns with the traffic on this project. I did want to note a few more things that we looked at. One is sight lines. And we did measure sight lines from the driveway in accordance with criteria in the DOT Highway Design Manual. And for the 35-mile-per-hour design speeds out there, 490 feet are required for a school bus exiting the site. We did measure over 1,000 feet looking to north, so that sight distance is ample. Looking to the south, we measured 330 feet. That was obstructed by some overgrown vegetation there, which you can see on this exhibit. But with clearing of that vegetation on the east side of Bloomfield Avenue to the south of the site, and this is all within the state right-of-way, we can achieve 875 feet of sight distance, which is more than adequate to exceed the DOT criteria for safe egress. We also reviewed crash data, the latest 3 years of available data from the Yukon Crash Repository, and we did not identify any unique crash patterns in the vicinity of the site, and the frequency and severity of the crashes was not considered abnormal. Lastly, I wanted to touch on parking. We did do a brief parking analysis. The lot is going to be expanded from 55 to 60 spaces, so a small expansion. Wanted to note, all these students that are being added are elementary school age students, so obviously none of them drive. Most of them arrive by bus. One of the 2 buses that arrives on a daily basis to the site. There are 40 faculty and staff members, and only a small handful, I believe 2 or 3 older students who actually drive their own car to the site. So really only have a demand of about 42, 43 spaces there, and we're providing a total of 60. So we have ample parking on the site. Just as a cross check, I checked the rates in the ITE Parking Generation Manual, 5th edition, for a private school, K-12 private school. And for a school of 120 students, the ITE manual recommends 42 spaces, which is exactly what our demand is. So it cross-checked there, and we're confident we have sufficient parking on this site to accommodate the demand. So with that, just to conclude, our traffic and parking study revealed that this project, its expansion will not have a significant impact to traffic operations on the adjacent road network. And again, that assumes the clearing and trimming of vegetation just to the south of the site driveway. And with that, I guess we'll turn it over for a presentation on the architecture.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Adam Palmer, project manager and registered architect with Phase Zero Design out of Simsbury. As everyone has already alluded to, the proposed addition for this building was to accommodate the consolidation of the 2 schools in Bloomfield and West Hartford so that all students can now exist under one roof. In analyzing the requirements for additional space, it was determined the best approach for the addition was to provide new classrooms for grades pre-kindergarten through 2. The new construction of these classrooms was more advantageous rather than trying to renovate existing space in the school, given the requirements for countertop height for plumbing fixtures to accommodate students of that age. It was deemed a better approach to build all of that brand new rather than renovate existing space and still require a building addition, new construction for other grades. So the approach that we took was to extend the building to the north/northeast, connecting off of the student commons as a common point for all students, to congregating throughout the day for food preparation, and then also being adjacent to the gymnasium. Locating the addition where we did, it kind of provides a separate entity, the safe haven for the littler kids, for ages 2 up through grade 2. We're providing three pre-kindergarten classrooms, and then 1 classroom each for kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade. Associated toilet facilities and other support spaces like a library, a resource room, and a workroom for the teachers who will be in this area of the building. Single-story addition. There was no real option to go up on the existing building without causing a lot of angst with the building occupants. By locating the addition here, maintaining a single story, we can complete construction during the school year with as little impact on the existing school as possible. We'll go to the next slide, please. There are some renovations on the interior of the building. We are making some minor modifications to the existing main office area to accommodate the additional staff moving into the building. We will be redemising some of the existing office space, so the entire footprint of that main office stays the same, but providing some additional walls and doors inside the suite. We will be providing a new nurse suite. There's currently a nurse in the main office space. We'll be providing a new suite across the hall, so it's centrally located and adjacent to the main entrance to the building. One of the comments from the health department was to provide a room for cots as part of that suite, so we have accommodated that in our revised plan, which we're showing tonight. So from the nurse's office, there will be a door to an adjacent room with 4 cots with cubicle curtains on the ceiling and individual lighting with lighting dimmability for the students when they are laying on the cots. Other renovations in the existing building, we will be redemising the existing library to provide 1 additional classroom for one of the upper grades, and then providing conference room and AV and storage space off of the library. Next slide, please. Here we're showing the building elevation. So at the top right is an overall front elevation of the building from Bloomfield Ave. On the right-hand side is the existing 2-story building. In the middle is the gymnasium and student commons area. And then on the left is the visible portion of our proposed addition, single story with a gabled roof on the addition to really highlight the presence of the early childhood portion of the building. And then below that, we're showing the 4 main elevations of our proposed addition. We're keeping similar materials to what's there. The base of the walls will have a thin brick veneer so that we're providing a durable material that can hold up to general wear and tear, students coming and going from the play areas into the building, and provide long-term durability so that it's reduced maintenance for the building themselves. Above that, we're providing a cementitious board and batten siding. There is existing cementitious lap siding. We wanted to stay in that same vernacular, but not try to match the existing lap siding, because trying to match existing 10-plus-year-old lap siding to new would clearly look like it didn't match. So we stuck with the same material, but turned it vertical, going with a board and batten siding. So we're staying within the same aesthetic as what is there now. And then you see these blue highlights on the elevations. We're providing a spandrel panel above the windows to build off of the color scheme that's in the school's logo and provide a little bit more of a pop of color on the building without really diverging too far from the existing style that's in place. Next slide, please. So here is going back to the overall site plan. We're showing in the lighter pink terracotta color the building addition where there's a flat roof. To the right or to the left of that is the gable roof. Again, we've tucked it away from the road so there's fewer distractions. It's a safer environment for the children ages 2 to grade 2, and they're directly adjacent to our new play area. As we've talked about through all of this, with being in the uplands review area, but outside of the wetlands themselves, it just so happened that the program and the site worked out perfectly to build the addition where we put it and have direct access to the play area. Sometimes these things just fall into place. Other times architects bang their heads against the wall and have a lot of tough conversations with the civil engineer and the landscape architect as to how are we going to make this work. This one, thankfully, everything just kind of fell into place. And with that, I will turn it back over to Ted and or Robin if there are any other closing comments we want to make.
Thank you, Adam. Yes, I should just make a couple of findings with regard to both the wetland review and the special permit findings that you have to consider in deciding the applications before we turn it over to you and to the public. With regard to wetlands, again, there are no direct wetland impacts. The environmental impact of the proposed regulated activity on wetlands or watercourses will not be so significant as to warrant the denial of this application. And to support this action, the applicant's registered soil scientist and professional wetland scientist, Michael Soares, submitted a report to you dated December 10, 2021, in which he stated that the proposed activities are not likely to have a significant impact on watercourses and wetlands as long as the plans are followed. I think it's fair to say that the applicant's purpose for the proposed regulated activity is a valid and useful one, and that there are no reasonable, feasible, prudent alternatives with regard to the proposed addition that would cause less or no environmental impact to wetlands or watercourses, as there are indeed no actual direct impact to those resources. Overall, he indicated in his statements to you that the long-term productivity of the wetlands and watercourses will not be damaged by the approval of this application. And finally, I think it's fair to say that the water quality of runoff from the site will continue to be managed in accordance with accepted best management practices. So I think it's fair to say that you can make positive findings with regard to the analysis of impacts on the wetland and watercourses and approve the regulated activity application. With regard to the special use standard, you have three considerations to make. The first is concerning the size and location, and we posit for you that the location, size, operational intensity of expanded school use, including the relationship of the site with respect to the streets giving access to it, will remain in harmony with development of the district. The existing school has operated at this site for over a decade, coexisting well with both its institutional and residential neighbors. The Academy is committed to maintaining that relationship and to responding expeditiously to any concerns that may arise, evidenced by the increased buffering provided by this plan once the issue of corrective screening, again with regard to the existing building, not the proposed new one, was brought to its attention. And since the TP&Z unanimously found that the establishment of the school in 2009 met all SUP standards of site and use suitability, the question for you this evening is whether or not the proposed expansion will change those findings in a negative way, such as you could no longer support this proposal. I think it's fair to say that the applicant's team has designed the building and site improvements to fit comfortably on the existing site, which is sizable, and we've shown you that it's heavily wooded between the school and neighboring residences. Town engineering planning staff have determined that there are no technical issues with the site development plan, so it works, except for the fact that we are still waiting for a final sign-off with regard to the stormwater system, though I believe we have effectively responded to all the comments raised by the engineering division with regard to that. And finally, the additional buffering proposed will also benefit neighbors on Sunny Reach Drive, enhancing protection for them. So I think we meet the first criteria with regard to whether or not this is worthy of special use permit approval. Two, The kind, location, and height of structures and the nature and extent of landscaping will not hinder or discourage the development and use of adjacent properties. The architecture of the addition is particularly handsome, incorporating elements of the carriage house on the site. Located towards the back of the existing structure, it does not proportionally overwhelm the building or views of the school from the street. The school will continue to exist well within the context of the institutional uses on Bloomfield Avenue. A significant wooded area between the addition and residences to the north and on Sunny Reach Drive remains in place. The effect overall will be positive with regard to the development and use of adjacent properties. The proposed landscaping is clearly extensive. And finally, the parking, loading, and trash facilities are appropriate for the use, and the entrance and exit driveways are safe. There are 60 parking spaces on the redesigned site plan, which includes the 5 new spaces. This is demonstrably sufficient for the proposed expanded operations, as students will continue to arrive by bus predominantly, except for the 3 high school students who currently drive. With the expansion, there will be 40 total staff personnel. The 60 spaces provided accommodate this use. No changes proposed to the previously approved existing school driveway. No changes are proposed to the existing trash facilities, previously unanimously approved by this commission, and the town traffic engineering staff has reviewed the proposed development plan and has found it to be acceptable. So with all that, we conclude our presentation and hope that you can approve this application, and we look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Attorney Pearson. If we could just have I don't know if we want to leave the presentation up. I don't know if the commissioners want that up. It may take me a second to recognize you if you have questions. Do we have questions for the applicant? Either SUP or IWW. Ms. Gillette, please.
I have a couple of questions which are more informational for me. With the buffer planting schedule on L304, you indicate that you have included 16 eastern hemlocks with the presence of fuzzy egglid. Why are these included?
Mike?
Yeah, we are using hemlocks now where there's access and they can be monitored. There's no other plant that does as a native evergreen that will produce the way they do. They're specifically located adjacent to the canopy, and the pines that were planted there initially, the neighbors were not happy with because they just don't thrive like the hemlocks do in those conditions. So we are using hemlocks on schools, and the clients have just got to be aware that they need an IPM program to monitor those. And frankly, we haven't had any issues really in the last 10 years of woolly adelgid.
And since that buffering was such an important part of your plan here, such a responsive part, I know there are 16. There are 12 Norway spruce, but it is the largest number of plantings. Is part of this maintenance and checking and upkeeping part of the application to make sure that those are maintained in a healthy way? Is that part of the application?
We can make that a condition of approval on the application.
Okay, that would be nice. Looking also at the same page, the L304, there's a list, and I may not be able to read this right. There's a list of a planting schedule that lists flowering trees and upland shrubs and all kinds of good stuff, but there are no quantities listed there. I'm not quite sure what the plant schedule box where that applies.
Mike?
Yeah, I'm going to the actual plant schedule.
You had said extensive landscaping and the buffer, I understand.
Yeah,
but
if you look at the
sure what
planting
that is.
plan, it shows the location of trees
Not quite sure what the plant
and,
schedule
and shrub massings. And
where that applies.
the plants will come from that list. They will be chosen from that list at the sizes that are specified in that list. So the detailed plans have not been worked out, and we took the same approach in the original design as well, and we're doing that on all projects so that we have a plant list to pick from. We're showing the location of ornamental trees and shade trees, where they're located, and the sizes they would be in the plant list as well.
There are no shade trees included in that
Yeah,
plan.
actually there aren't in this one. The shade trees that are in the parking lots and along the entrance drive are going to remain in their existing condition. So we just added primarily flowering trees that are right by the new play area in front of the addition. And we thought it would be good to have more ornamental trees in that particular area, so we get some spring and seasonal color.
Okay, it's just kind of a little extensive plantings, and frankly, there really is no detail to the plantings, and a big list of plants that you can pick from, which I understand, but no numbers. So I'm not sure that extensive planting is really evidenced in the plan. Another question I had, and I'm sure I'm missing something. Did the fire, and this may be for Todd, did the fire chief sign off on this? Is there any way to get a fire truck to the back of the building? It appears to be all lawn.
Can I comment, or I guess Todd could comment on that. We do many elementary schools, many schools, and the fire code is the school is fully sprinklered, which this is. You need to get within 430 feet. So we attain that from coming in from both sides, and that's the way they took the approach in the original design as well.
Okay, it just struck me as much as I liked not seeing a driveway going around the back with impervious surface. I was just concerned about the weight of a fire truck. But I didn't see anything from the fire chief. Was there something in our packet that I missed?
Commissioner Gillette, this is Todd May. There was not anything you missed. This was referred to the fire marshal's office, but we do not have any specific comments from them.
All right. Well, I think that's kind of it for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gillette. Do we have any other questions? I think for Mr. Binkhorst. Josh Kaplan remains silent if you have no questions. I know you're on your phone this time. Silence is acceptance. Ms. Gillette, follow up.
I guess I'd ask Mr. May, are there any other of our usual, for instance, what was design reviews comments? Are there any of our other usual inputs that are missing?
You did not, this did not get referred to the design review committee. When you received the application, there was no formal referral there, so this did not go to design review. Attorney Pearson correctly pointed out we do have a set of outstanding engineering comments on the stormwater site design side that have yet to be formally re-reviewed by the engineering division. Other than that, it went through our normal course of referral comments.
So the stormwater final review is not finalized and it's next to a wetlands. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gillette. Ms. Gomes dropped off for a moment there. I don't see any hands up, however, so.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to
Thank
note
you.
for the record, I heard the entirety of the applicant's presentation. I just had some tech issues during Commissioner Gillette's questions, but I did get the tenor of them. So I was here and I'm back.
Thank you. All right. All right, so at this point then, we would move on to the public comment portion. I'll start with Mr. Dumais. I only saw one emailed comment, and I believe council addressed that during her presentation. Do we have any additional email comments?
Mr. Chairman, we do not.
Okay. Mr. Goslin, I did notice a new phone number up. Do we have comments via telephone?
Mr. Chairman, I do see that a number has called in. I'm going to attempt to send a request to unmute to the number ending in 58. Please be sure to state your name for permission. I believe that the code is *6 to unmute.
So for the individual who's called in and your last two digits of your phone number is 58. If you desire to make a comment on this application, press *6. That line appears to remain muted, Mr. Goslin, so I will move past. If they jump in, we'll circle back and if that happens before the hearing closes. All right, well then I will then declare the public comment portion of the hearing to be finished. However, certainly if the applicant has any concluding remarks, please proceed.
If I may, I'd just like to say a few things with regard to some of the comments that Commissioner Gillette raised.
Sure.
I think Mike Segan responded, it seemed to me, pretty reasonably with regard to the fire code review. We do have to go through fire code review as part of a building permit in any event. I certainly, but I'm not voting on this. I certainly was satisfied by the response that he gave with regard to his experience and the fact that the existing building is really no different with regard to fire access to the rear than what we have now. But should things change for some reason, we would have to come back. So I think if your concern is about that, there is protection in place there. With regard to the stormwater review, I mean, if you read through the comments on the stormwater review, I think we've addressed them. If after engineering looks at it in more detail, they have an issue of significant concern that requires us to redesign, then we would have to come back to you. I don't think that's going to be the case, but there are safeguards there also. So I don't know what else I can say with regard to you know, that aspect, but I hope it is not a concern such as that you would not be able to reasonably support this application.
Sure, Ms. Gillette.
I think these are just some of it is just boilerplate, but I would like to see a sort of a condition put in about approvals if that's the way we go. And Ms. Pearson, would your client be amenable to a condition about maintenance on the landscaping plan?
I said yes without checking with my client, but I'm going to look at Ted and hopefully it'll shake us. You got a thumbs up from Ted. So that's fine.
Okay.
Council said yes.
Great.
Mr. Chairman, if I could.
Mr. Dumais.
This is Robert Goslin, moderator again. I did see that the previous number ending in 58 has unmuted at this point.
Oh, excellent. Okay. So we will circle back to public comment then. Do you have any comment on the application from New England Jewish Academy?
Yes, hi, this is Susan Putterman from 7 Sunny Reach Drive. Sorry, I was having trouble getting my phone to unmute. And maybe now it's not as relevant that the last couple minutes have taken place, but I wanted to, reiterate, we had submitted on behalf of ourselves and the Nestlers at 9 Sunny Reach, the written response that we, have been working with Mike and Ted, and I think that has gone really well, where what is in the plan is now satisfactory to us. I think they had mentioned that some of this was left over from the last 10 years of when the building was built, which some of it is. We don't think all of it, but that if this is done and maintained, that we would now be satisfied. So I did want to jump on and stress that we wanted this to be formal in the plan, not only that they were required to do this planting, but that it be maintained, which then you did follow up on while I was trying to get off mute. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much for your comment. We really appreciate it. So what we'll do at this point then is, because we took another public comment, I would definitely, if council had anything further, before we close the hearing, I definitely wanted to give you that opportunity.
I do not, but I see a hand raised by Mr. Dumais.
Oh, there you are. What do you got there, Todd?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to follow up on Commissioner Gillette's question and comment on the stormwater component, I would, again, I'm not the town engineer or the engineer that reviewed this on the staff side, but these are of a more technical nature regarding some of the stormwater design elements. And I heard Commissioner Gillette start to phrase the question, but before the hearing is closed, would like to pose it to the applicant's attorney, whether or not they would accept a condition that all of these engineering reviews be completed to the satisfaction of the engineering division prior to the issuance of any building permit.
Normally, I could easily say yes to that. There's one comment in there that Ms. Baringa had spoke to a possible change that would take us, if it was done the way she wanted, or was asking us about, and I'm looking for Keith with regard to this, that had to do with dispersal point and whether that was going to take us 10 feet closer to the wetlands. I mean, if our response, I think, satisfies the concern she raised, but if for some reason she still had an issue with that, we would have to come back. Keith? You're muted. You're muted.
Yeah, that's in regards to the underdrain question. And there's a couple options we could do to satisfy the comment. One, we could do what she suggested in her comment, is to add the underdrain to the outlet control structure, which would push the riprap bedding closer to the wetland, or we could just eliminate it. Basically what we did is we added it as like a belt and suspenders kind of operation, just sort of good engineering practice to have, or to make sure that the basin drains. But if we follow with what was done previously, there's no underdrain in the existing basin, yet there's no water there. So if this becomes a point that if it's, I guess the point is it's not needed. We don't need to do it. So if it has any impact to the wetland area or closer to the wetland area, we can just simply eliminate it, or we can try and make something work with a different invert. But whatever, I think whatever be easiest, and I guess in this case it would just simply be eliminate it.
Okay, with that, I think we could say that, we will work with staff to resolve the issues and eliminate the underdrain if indeed that's still an issue by the engineering division.
Thank you, counsel. So Todd, I just want to make sure that you're satisfied and you're able to articulate that when we get around to deliberation.
Mr. Chairman, I think so. That was much clearer given the detailed response by the applicant.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dumais. Do you have anything further, counsel?
No, we do not. Thank you very much for your time, and hopefully you can see to approve this application.
Thank you, Attorney Pearson. Before I close the hearing, just a quick praise to the entire team. You guys worked very well together. We appreciate the thoroughness of your application and the work that you put into it. I would especially call out Mike Segan and his background, which is real truth in advertising back there. So I greatly appreciate that. But thank you everyone for your patience. And actually just a quick, the New England Jewish Academy has come a long way. And it's pretty, this is in no way reflects on how I'm going to vote, but I just wanted to praise, that this is before us. I believe its start was in the basement of a synagogue. And so this is pretty neat to see. So with that, this hearing is closed. And so now, for the benefit of the commissioners and the staff, we are going to take a 5-minute recess before we move on to our next application. So I'll see you guys in a little bit.
I'm here.
All right, I think we're gonna call it back into order. Mr. Dumais, the next item ready to go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. West Hartford Plan and Zoning Commission legal notice. The Town of West Hartford Plan and Zoning Commission, also acting as the Inland Wetland and Watercourse Agency, will hold its regular meeting at 6 p.m. on Monday, March 7th. Public hearing and meeting will be conducted exclusively in a format in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act as amended by Public Act 21-2, which authorizes municipalities to conduct public meetings virtually. Following proceeding will convene at 6:15 p.m. or soon thereafter as the matter may be heard. 25 Kane Street. Requesting approval of an inland wetland and watercourse permit to conduct certain regulated activities which may have an adverse impact on a wetland regulated area. The applicant proposes the reconfiguration and reconstruction of an existing commercial parking lot, building accessibility and ADA improvements, the relocation of existing trash enclosure, and landscape improvements. The proposed work is within a 150-foot upland review area. No direct wetland impacts are proposed. Submitted for agency receipt on February 7th, determined to be potentially significant and set for public hearing. The application is available for public review in the Town Planning and Zoning Office from 214 Town Hall 50 South Main Street, or by visiting the town's website, or by email request to comment.tpz@westhartfordct.gov. Members of the public can view the meeting live on YouTube or on West Hartford Community Television at whctv.org or YouTube.com/WHCTV5. Any interested persons may participate in real time by calling 408-418-9388 and using the following access code 2336974-6105. Any interested person may also submit written comment via email to comment.tpz@westhartfordct.gov. Kevin Ahern, TPZ IWW Chair, Todd Dumais, Town Planner, posted to the town's website on 2/22, published on the Hartford Current on 2/25 and 3/3. Mr. Chairman, before the applicant begins, I would like to point out to the commission that there are two associated late items with this application, each of which is in response to staff prior issued staff comments. I can affirmatively state that all outstanding staff comments have been satisfactorily addressed. One of the outstanding comments was just a statement of a 5-year activity of plan, which their updated narrative now includes. And then lastly, there was a request from my office for a detailed section of their new proposed rain garden. And that's a good way to introduce and set the applicant up for their presentation. At the time of receiving this application, which is essentially a reuse of the existing building at 25 Kane Street, it was pointed out by 2 commission members that they wanted to hear more detail about opportunities for incorporation of low impact development features, such as some enhancement of stormwater, so there wasn't a direct discharge into the watercourse, generally to the south of the property. In addition, I believe it was you, Commissioner Gillette, you just wanted an update and more information on the remediation efforts of a past violation that occurred on this site, which is ongoing. So I communicated both of those items to the applicant and their team, which you will see a fairly significant LID feature, stormwater management feature incorporated into this revised plan design. In addition, the site wetland professional soil scientist is available by the applicant's team tonight to provide an update, although it was included in your application materials in terms of the remediation efforts and updates. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it over to the applicant and their team to conduct their presentation.
Thank you, Todd. Is the applicant ready to proceed?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Dumais. I'm Dave LaFrisco, civil engineer with Kimley Horn Engineering, and I'm representing the Starbucks Coffee Company and, excuse me, on these 25 Kane Street improvements and on behalf of the site owner, Thomas Evans. Also in attendance, as mentioned, Martin Brogy, wetland specialist representing the site owner and involved in the ongoing wetland revitalization at the site. This site, as previously mentioned, consists of an existing restaurant facility with drive-through and commercial parking lot. The project scope under this application includes the realignment of the existing drive-through, accessibility, and ADA improvements, asphalt remediation, parking lot restriping, a 350 square foot outdoor patio and outdoor seating, trash enclosure relocation, and landscape improvements inclusive of a 2,500 square foot rain garden situated south of the project site. Sorry. The proposed work is within the 150 foot wetland upland review area and no direct wetland impacts are proposed. The existing restaurant building will consist of renovations inclusive of facade improvements and footprint reduction. The proposed work does not extend beyond the existing developed area, except as needed for wetland buffer improvements consisting of wetland planning and rain garden additions. As part of this work, the project proposes a reduction in overall parking from about 50 spaces to 31, a 700 square foot reduction of site impervious will be converted to landscaping, and grading is otherwise to match existing except as needed to restore drainage as part of the proposed site improvements and for rain garden construction. In response to the Commission and staff's request, we are proposing drainage and treatment improvements to the site. Stormwater runoff from 17,000 square feet of the proposed parking area will now sheet flow to a proposed rain garden instead of being collected at the southernmost basin and point discharge through an 18-inch pipe with flared ends direct to the wetland without treatment or flow reduction. 3 existing inlets at the north of the site will remain and be maintained and drain to the existing 60-inch town drain easement. The proposed rain garden is 2,500 square feet and provides 1,700 cubic feet of storage. A 12 by 12 gabion wall with wire mesh and riprap gravel will surround the rain garden so that the edges of the rain garden stay intact. And a flush curb will be installed at the back end of the parking area to allow sheet flow to drain off site into the rain garden. The rain garden and buffer area will be planted with native wetland plantings, which will both function within the rain garden and to implement vegetation in the buffer area. Thanks again for your time this evening in hearing this proposal. At this time, I'd also like to pass over to Martin Brogy so he can speak a little bit more on the revitalization efforts that are also ongoing at this site.
Thank you, Mr. Brogy.
You can just relinquish the screen. I still see the map up. I don't really need the map.
Sure.
Thank you. There we go. Thank you, sir. Good evening, everyone. Nice to see you again. and thank you, Dave, for that presentation. It's been nice to work with Kimley Horn out of Manhattan on this project. They're really creative and sort of out of the box thinkers and sort of artistic with their design. The variety of herbaceous plants and woody vegetation that they proposed in the rain garden and around the site is really awesome, and it was really fun to go through. Even the seed mix that they chose for the rain garden. I really get into seed mixes myself, and it has a wide variety of flowering plants and things that the bees would really enjoy, and shrubs that are also berry producing and flowering. Very wildlife friendly, and with enough variety such that ultimately it will be self-selected for the drought tolerance of that basin, which, as we know, will be somewhat seasonal. And just the robust planting scheme is really awesome. I mean, you can just take a look at the number of plants that they're suggesting, the size of that rain garden, and then all the landscaping around the building and around through the drive-through and the outdoor seating. It's going to be a beautiful, beautiful development. And it's nice that that rain garden is along Cane Brook, intercepting all that surface water flow, capturing the initial flush, treating it, and then slowly discharging it over those gabion walls as a level spreader across. I think it's about 160, 180 feet across the back of that site. And it's just a really nice design, really low impact green infrastructure design versus that one catch basin that just grabs everything from the back of the site and just dumps it into the brook. So I really liked it, and it dovetails nicely with the existing restoration plan that's been ongoing pretty intensely for almost a year now. I just recently updated an inspection that was the result of us tracking down a really terrific greenhouse that had some excellent native winter stock that was perfect for the site that Mr. Evans found down in Westbrook. And we managed to get through the frost and get this winter hardy shrub stock in on the site and come up to meet the specifications of the initial planting, and actually, in fact, exceed them. The restoration plan that was approved in mid-2020 and consisted of 68 different shrubs and 22 trees. And we are up to 22 trees and 89 shrubs, so we're plus 21 across the board. So we did have some difficulty with some flooding events in the fall and a little bit of die-off. That was in my last report, saying that we were behind. And the 3 black willows that were selected were not thriving. They weren't the right size. They were all we could get at the time. But again, through their diligence, they tracked down 3 really awesome looking black willows and got them into the site. So the site is currently exceeding its woody vegetation quota, let's just say, by almost 20%. And that's a good margin to hold for the number of years when things become established and the site gets set up in terms of all the plants adapting to the different moisture regimes and really taking hold. And we have the flexibility to move some stuff around if we need to as well. If some plants aren't doing as well up on the flat, we can move them down closer to the water. But we have a 21 shrub fluff, if you will, right now to play with. I'm feeling really encouraged. They've done a great job with beating back the invasive species. That's going to go on certainly in the spring. The project really took off in earnest last summer when we got a lot of the debris out of there. We found contractors to move the heavy material out of the area, and then really hit it hard this past spring with the plantings and the grass seed and the erosion control and that sort of thing. And there haven't been any failed erosion control events out there in spite of the many storms. And boy, the Cane Brook really takes on the floodwaters. I mean, it's amazing how much goes down there from the adjacent impervious areas that Cane Brook really seems to manage. So I'm encouraged by the planting scheme. Again, it exceeds what we anticipate. The grass looks terrific. The site's well stabilized. I know it's a lot more open than it was previously, but I think that the openness will actually help some of the flowering plants and the flowering shrubs provide better habitat than being completely enveloped by the invasives as it was before. The pines up on the hill look nice. The oaks on the flat are going to be nice as well. And keep in mind, there's an existing sewer right away that runs right across that area that was completely overgrown and not maintained. And now manhole to manhole, it's wide open for the MDC. So hopefully they appreciate that. But again, I think that the proposed plan for Starbucks, again, a classy national tenant, has a really nice design here. And it's a great opportunity for the town of West Hartford to really capitalize on a site that's been vacant and sort of languishing for a while, and in fact reduce impervious surface, decrease the number of parking spaces pretty significantly, and have some beautiful planting. So I think it's a nice opportunity. I think it blends well with the environmental objectives of this site. And I just want to say again, I know there's been ongoing concern about the implementation of the plan. It seemed to be off to a slow start, but I think that was mostly has to do with the bidding process and the weather at the time and COVID issues. But I can assure you that we're well on top of the planting scheme at this point. Again, being 21 plants ahead, and I'm really enjoying the process. I'll be out there again in the spring and give you another report on that. That's all I have to say. Thank you. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, Mr. Brogy. Do we have anything further from the applicant?
I have no further comments.
Thank you. Do we have questions from the commission? Ms. Gillette.
I want to thank you, and I appreciate your enthusiasm on this. But this has been a really long. After waking up one morning and finding that entire area clear cut and filled with the debris, it's been a long time. Now, it may be to your advantage that we had a worldwide pandemic in the middle of all of this, because that cut you a little time. But you wouldn't have problems with black willows and what are dry plants and what are wet plants if you hadn't cut down all the trees that were there. And I'm not talking about the invasives, I'm talking about all of the cottonwoods and the other things. And I know it may not be anybody who is sitting here at the table, the virtual table right now. This never should have happened. I'm glad that we pushed back, and I'm glad to see the rain garden. But I want to see a real maintenance plan from the owner. I'm not looking at this as a Starbucks application so much as an owner application. And that's where the responsibility lies. And I'm going to want to be reassured about ongoing maintenance in terms of this property, in terms of keeping the rain garden functional, et cetera, et cetera. And if it all works out the way it looks on paper now, I will be happy to introduce you at the Landscape Awards dinner for taking a bad situation and making it 10 times better. Because the plans look good, but I just want to make sure that there's follow through. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gillette. Do we have any questions? Any further questions?
I don't know. Just to address that a little bit, Dave and I actually had a quick exchange on that very subject as well. And I spoke with the owner before the meeting about the rain garden, and I said it's going to come up. You know, we need to provide assurances that the rain garden is going to be maintained. You know, who's going to do it? Whose responsibility is it? Liz, it's a great question. You know, everything looks good on paper, and then it goes to hell in the field. Well, there's in this situation, it's a little different than some. There are very, and we don't have an attorney on the call like the last applicant, but the attorney would explain that there's a lease agreement between the owner and Starbucks, and that lease agreement indicates that Starbucks will be responsible for maintaining the Starbucks property, including all the paved surfaces, snow removal, and that sort of thing, and as well as maintaining the rain garden. And then Dave and I spoke specifically about that, and that is a lease tenant responsibility. And if you drive around the state of Connecticut and look at the Starbucks properties, I think you might get some reassurances that they do a pretty nice job taking care of their properties. And as far as the wetland restoration plan, that is certainly on the owner to continue to make sure that this thing is going to take off and do what we think it's going to. And mind you, we had I remember putting out the 3-year maintenance plan for the wetland restoration on the remainder of the parcel around Fernbrook when this all first happened. And I recall the commission being delighted that we had a 3-year plan to monitor the restoration plan. And the monitoring didn't start as soon as we got approval. I assure you the monitoring started just this past summer or fall with my first report. So we're not even through our first year of monitoring this thing. And I think we're already ahead of the game. And Tom's very committed and very hands-on to all of his properties. And so to the first point, he and Starbucks have gone back and forth as far as who's responsible for the property itself, the Starbucks infrastructure, and it is Starbucks, and I think Dave can attest to that as well. And for Tom, the owner, he's responsible for making sure that the wetland restoration plan, as permitted by the commission in 2020, will be completed.
I guess my response to that would be Starbucks is great, but D'Angelo's was great too. They're gone. So 5 years from now, Starbucks is gone and we've got Joe's crappy hot dog stand and it's their responsibility. So I'm sorry, it seems to me the rain garden is part of the wetlands remediation. And I don't know legally how that works out, but this is part of the remediation.
I think, Liz, I think we can, Commissioner Gillette, I think we can reasonably state that either or both the lessee or the lessor are responsible for the maintenance of this site. But to be sure, there is ultimately this is going to adhere to the owner, and the owner's merely passed on the responsibility to the person to whom they're leasing this site. But let's say there's a big old breakup and Starbucks leaves, right? Thomas Evans is responsible for this site. So there is a responsible individual for this site at all times, ultimately, and it's Thomas Evans. And it's just, I think the sort of the Starbucks coming in and Mr. Shipe coming in, I think is just, they're going to do it for Mr. Evans, but Mr. Evans is ultimately responsible for the site.
Okay, so we do have somebody call.
Yeah.
Years from now.
Mr. Brogate referred to a Tom, and I think that was Mr. Evans.
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure that this isn't going to be one of those we've got to call Ghostbusters because we don't know who's working on the. Okay, all right. It's a very sensitive topic for me.
Well handled, Mr. Brogate.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions on this item? Okay.
Improvements look good.
What's that, Mr. Lett?
The improvements look good. The rain garden is good. I just want to make sure it stays because it was a very, very positive addition.
Very visible site in a rapidly evolving shopping center. So, all right. So at this point, then I would first check with Mr. Dumais and to see if we have any additional or any public comment on this item.
We do not, Mr. Chairman.
All right. And Mr. Goslin, do we have any telephone public comment?
Mr. Chairman, it does appear as though we have a call-in. They look as though they are unmuted. I believe it is the number ending in 92. If you are here to speak on this application, be sure to speak your name for the record. Thank you.
So the area code is 978, and the last two numbers are 92. If you're here to speak on the application by the Starbucks Corporation on Kane Street, spotlight is on you. Going once, going twice. All right. We will move on back to the applicant before we close the hearing. Do we have anything further from the applicant?
Thank you.
Nothing further.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. And then with that, then this hearing is closed. So we've come to the end of our, wait, Mr. Dumais, we won't go to 15, correct?
Correct. That's just a placeholder on the agenda. No action this evening.
All right, so as promised, we will go back and deliberate on our public hearing items. So we will start with item number 9. This is the University of St. Joseph's look back. Mr. Dumais, if you could remind us what the motion would be that we would be making on this item, that would be great.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Unlike the remaining applications on the agenda, this is a bit unique and it's a look back. So your motion is to either determine no additional operational conditions are required, or to determine that there are conditions required to address concerns that were raised during this look back review period on this special use permit.
Okay, so that is the motion then. So this is the University of St. Joseph. This is the track, not the track, I'm sorry, the field. Do we, for the purpose of discussion, we have a motion on this item?
Mr. Chairman, before we jump into an actual vote, I just want to confirm that Commissioner Kaplan is still on the line because I believe he would be seated on all items going forward.
Thank you. God, I had a note for myself on that and everything, and I didn't. So Mr. Kaplan, you will be voting on all of these items. So when we do vote, I think you're probably locally muting. So I will have everybody vote and then we'll just wait to make sure.
Yeah, Commissioner Hearn, I am still present, though I will remind you I am recusing myself on item number 9.
Oh, that's right. Yep, sorry. He's recused on 9, so not this item. Very long time ago when he told me that.
Yes,
all right. So then do we have a motion on this item? Mr. Bakehorst, unmute, please.
Make a motion to impose no additional new conditions on the permit.
Thank you, Mr. Bakehorst. So we have the motion. Any discussion?
None.
Any discussion on this item? All right. Other than to just reiterate my general suspicion of crumb rubber, but no actual basis to say no on this. Need everybody's and during that. All right, then let me try your minds. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Thank you. Those opposed, 4-0. All right. Then next up is item number 10. This is the SUP St. Thomas the Apostle School. This was the playground structure. We have a motion on this item. Ms. Gomes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to approve the special use permit for 25 Dover Road.
Thank you, Ms. Gomes. Any comment? And then we'll get to Mr. Dumais has a comment.
None.
Mr. Dumais?
Just as a reminder on the remaining applications, including this, we have a standard set of conditions, and on a special use permit, that does include a required look back period. So any maker of the motion need to incorporate those into the motion.
So incorporated.
Thank you, Ms. Gomes. All right, so we have that amendment. Do we have any further comment on this item? Seeing and hearing none, let me try your minds. All those in favor say aye.
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 Mr. Kaplan, was that an aye?
Yes, it was.
Thank you. All right, 5-0. SUP is approved. Item number 11 is Planet Fitness, also an SUP for 24-hour use. For purposes of discussion, do we have a motion on this item? Mr. Bakehorst.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Bakehorst. Any comment?
None from me.
Thank you, Mr. Bakehorst.
With the standard, I make a motion to approve with our standard set of conditions.
Mr. Demay, do you withdraw your hand or do you have anything further?
Mr. Chairman, just for the benefit of the applicant who's on the phone there, the standard set of condition is, in this instance, the finding that the approval meets the standards of section 177.37.4 and 177.42A, and establishes our required look-back period, and that's pursuant to 177.42A8, that the applicant must return to the TPZ by July 2023 for further review and evaluation. TPZ may consider supplemental conditions if operational concerns are identified. And then lastly, that the approval letter that would be generated, if this is a favorable vote, be striped under the final plan.
Thank you, Mr. Demay. Do we have any other comment? Mr. Lett, please.
I just want to say this, the 24-hour open thing is a real and fine at the 2 fitness places that we've had, but we've been in the middle of a pandemic. So looking back on anything at this point just seems kind of silly, because I can't imagine it's sort of standard operating procedure. But they really have posed no issues. So I will support this, despite the fact that they have massage chairs.
Thank you, Ms. Gillette. Do we have any other comments?
I'm glad we.
Ms. Gomes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll just note that I think it's a good location for the proposed use, and I will be voting in favor of this.
Thank you, Ms. Gomes. Any other comment? I will just note that I'm really trying hard not to hide my excitement and how many applications we have in this plaza tonight. This being the first of them, and I'm really I think, you know, objectively I think you made a good presentation. I think this is absolutely worthwhile voting for, but I actually genuinely want to taking interest in investing in the town. So I will be voting yes. Any further comment? All right, let me try your minds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Kaplan. That's 5-0.
Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
So items number 12 and 13, we do have to take up separately. We'll take them in order. So item number 12, this is both 300 Bloomfield Avenue. Item number 12 is the inland wetland portion of this. So for purposes of discussion, I'll entertain a motion on this item. Oh, come on, you chickens. Somebody jump in.
Fine.
Thank you, Mr. Bighorst.
I'll make a motion to accept the wetlands portion of the application.
Mr. Bighorst now truly understands the primary burden of the vice chair.
Just would like to, in way of comment, add that it was a very well put together application and very nicely presented by all parties. And I have no issues approving it.
Thank you, Mr. Bighorst. Mr. Dumais, I believe there are standard conditions that we would add to something of this nature, and also conditions that were discussed during the pendency of the application.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the standard set of conditions would be the plan of record incorporated by reference in the permit, wetland permit subject to full compliance with the town's erosion and sediment control requirements in accordance with 2002 state guidelines. Bi-weekly inspection reports of sediment erosion controls shall be submitted to the town planner. Additional sediment erosion control shall be implemented and or installed throughout the course of construction if deemed necessary and directed by design engineer or town officials. Prior to the start of any site disturbance, all sediment erosion controls and tree protections shall be installed. Once installed, but before the commencement of any site disturbance, the town planner shall be notified, provided the opportunity to inspect. The proposed buffer planning shall be installed prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy and shall be maintained in good health. And lastly, the permit shall expire if not exercised within 5 years from the date of issuance or date of final resolution of any legal action challenging the permit. The permit shall not be assigned, transferred, sublet, sold, or to any other person without the written permission of the agency. There was one additional condition that was discussed regarding engineering comments and generally, I think, stormwater maintenance. I think that's more appropriate to include as a condition on the special use permit that will run longer. So I carved that out from the wetlands piece and put it over there.
Thank you, Mr. Dumay. Ms. Gillette, I believe you're up next.
I don't, it seems to me if you're talking about an inland wetlands issue, stormwater and its management is absolutely key as opposed to being tied into an elementary school. I don't see how you can vote on an inland wetlands issue with no codified assurances that stormwater is being dealt with within that permit. Am I reading this wrong?
I mean, I would defer to the planner insofar as which one it should live in. Either way, it runs with the land, does it not?
It doesn't matter.
The wetlands permit doesn't necessarily. I mean, you're proposing this activity. The special use permit does run with the land. Again, I outlined the standard set of conditions, and I included one on the buffer. So if the maker of the motion wants to include commentary that the discussed stormwater related design features be satisfied to the satisfaction of the engineering department, notwithstanding the conversation of the hearing. It's up to the maker of the motion if they want to include that here. There's no harm in doing so. I just felt it more appropriate on the special use permit side, but leave it up
Well,
to
actually, I mean, can we just belt and suspenders this and have that be a condition on both?
It's completely up to the maker of the motion there, Mr. Binkhorst.
Right.
I'll split the difference and include them in both, and otherwise amend my motion to include everything Mr. Dumay so eloquently stated.
Thank you, Mr. Binkhorst. Ms. Gomes, I think I saw your hand, but I want to put you on the spot.
No, Mr. Chairman, it was just a question about our standard conditions of approval for wetlands approvals.
All right. Yes, Ms. Gillette.
And this doesn't relate just to this. Dude, in the past, the way past it seems now, didn't we have on things that came before us, they'd gone through design review and through the Conservation Commission, and we would get a list of their minutes. And was that just on town council referrals? I guess I am really feeling the absence of their input sometimes. And where are they?
Mr. Chairman, insofar that was a question for staff. The design review advisory committee is always required for town council referrals. Up until recently, it's only optional for a special use permit. Again, I addressed it during the hearing. You did not refer this to them, so it didn't go there. CEC, you are correct, Commissioner Gillette. In the past, we received communication on many applications, including wetlands. There is no requirement for any referral from a wetland application to CEC. That had been a past practice. They are going through some changes over in that commission, so perhaps when they have a new chair that reconstitutes the commission, we can explore that referral process. But again, that was not part of this review in this application or any of the applications tonight for that matter.
Okay, thank you. I really do miss their input though. Thank you.
So just as far as DRAC goes, Mr. Dumay, then the time if we want to have DRAC involved, we would do that when it first appears on our agenda. Is that the timing for us?
Correct. And I would try to highlight for you any specific concerns that I might have. In this instance, given the location of the addition and the placement of the playground and its kind of initial, well-designed buffer and plantings. I don't know what additional improvements or design criteria they could have addressed with the applicant. But yes, if on a special use permit application, if there is the desire of the planning commission to refer something, you would formally refer it to them for a finding. We try to sync it up with their calendar to provide you referral comments back.
Oh, did we do something like that? I don't know, maybe like Charter Oak or something? Was that right? That was an SUP, wasn't it?
That was a special use permit. I don't recall the last time you made a formal referral, if ever. I could look into that and report back to you.
Good to know, though. I always forget that we have that.
We got referrals from them, input from them on, for instance, when PF Chang went in at the mall. And I mean, they do chime in, for instance, a lot of the facade changes to shopping
SDD, right,
centers.
associated with
Those are all special development districts subject to council required referrals, so.
That's why I was wondering where.
Yeah, because then what happens is the council immediately splits it, sends it to us, sends it to DRAC,
okay.
and it comes back
All
to
right.
us. With
No, I mean, the proposal, speaking of the proposal before us, I think it's absolutely lovely. And I don't mention DRAC because of questions of their architectural choices.
Right. All right. Do we have any other comments on the inland wetlands piece?
Commissioner,
Mr. Kaplan.
I have one other. I guess I would like Mr. DeMay if he could just clarify for us. I know we've talked about in the past sort of what those standard conditions are for maintaining things like rain gardens, but is there anything for is there any standard conditions for maintaining these buffer plantings? Is that part of this or part of those standard conditions? I mean, in particular, during the presentation, they talked about how the use of eastern hemlocks as a buffer plant was going to require a monitoring plan. Eastern hemlocks, in particular, suffer from woolly adelgids, and a lot of them are dying across the state as a result of that invasive species. And I'm sure that's why during that presentation it was very thorough, and I did appreciate that they mentioned that was going to be part of that monitoring plan. But I guess I just was curious if Mr. DeMay could comment on whether the maintenance of those buffer plantings is included in some of those standard conditions or not.
Mr. DeMay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Kaplan. Yes, in this instance, I probably read it quickly, and I know you're calling in, which probably further is harder to hear. So in this instance, the standard condition that we use is the proposed buffer planting shall be installed and maintained according to the approved plans and shall be maintained in good health. So that was included here. So that's the standard language we use, absent any more specific. We have some more detailed language as it relates to special development districts that aren't subject to your review and approval, but that's the language we have typically used in these instances.
Okay, so then theoretically, if trees were to die, they would be required to do something about that.
Correct, and that's why I think that condition's more so important on the special use permit side.
Sure, yeah.
And there's
okay,
another
thank
one.
You.
If we get there, I can discuss as well regarding a more detailed maintenance plan be submitted.
Thank you, Mr. DeMay. Any further questions or comments? So we have a motion on the table by Mr. Binkhorst. Let me try your minds. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ms. Gillette, 4-1. Right. So next up is the SUP. Mr. Binkhorst, I believe you already made a promise to move of the motion, maker of the motion on that one.
No.
So entertain a motion on that item.
Okay, I will make a motion to approve with Todd Dumay's standard conditions that he will so eloquently read into the record for me.
Thank you, Mr. Bankhorst. And just as a reminder, these are the commission's standard set of conditions that I'm just reading on your behalf. Proposed finding meets the requirements of section 177.37.4 and 177.42A. The plan of records are incorporated by reference in this approval and shall guide the appearance, layout, operation of the school and expanded outdoor play areas. The special use permit is subject to full compliance with the town's erosion and sediment control requirements and shall be maintained in accordance with 2002 state guidelines. Prior to the start of any site disturbance, all sediment erosion controls and tree protection shall be installed. Once installed, but prior to the commencement of any site disturbance, town planner shall be notified and provided the opportunity to inspect. The proposed buffer planting shall be installed prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy and maintained in good health. The applicant shall, prior to the filing of the final plan, submit for review and approval by the town engineer and town planner a maintenance plan for the stormwater infrastructure on site. I think that goes to some of the concerns and questions on the new stormwater detention basins. Final as-built survey, and this is required on all special use permits for new construction, shall be submitted to the town planner upon completion of all work. Pursuant to the West Hartford Code of Ordinances 177.42A8, the applicant shall return to TPC by July 2023 for full further review and evaluation. TPC may consider supplemental conditions if operational concerns are identified. And there was the one other additional condition that we incorporated into the wetlands permit regarding the engineering staff comment fulfillment.
So amended. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dumay. Do we have any comments on the motion? Ms. Gillette.
So are you feeling confident with the planting issue and the keeping up with the hemlocks is covered under the existing language?
That directed to Mr. Dumay?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
I believe so, Commissioner Gillette, since it points to the requirement to maintain them in good health, and they were included on the plans that would potentially be approved by the commission if the motion is successful. So I think there's enough on the record to require they be maintained in good health.
Okay, and the comments that Attorney Pearson made about the building permit and having to get the fire department sign off, that's correct, I assume. I mean, we don't look at how many sprinklers there are. They look more in depth at the building permits. Is that right?
That's correct. And it's somewhat of a bit of chicken and egg in West Hartford, maybe not on this level of an application, but other levels of application sometimes requires more detailed plan submittals, but it's not as detailed as would be required of anyone applying for a building permit. So at the time of a building permit, the fire marshal and the building chief would actually review for all of their applicable code requirements. If for some reason there was an issue and their code impacted your approval, it would have to come back through in those rare instances for review if it conflicted with your approval. That happens more frequently on the special development side where we control architectural details, but I suppose theoretically it could be possible on a special use permit from time to time as well.
Okay, I'm just leery of supporting a special use permit for a school that hasn't been signed off on by the fire department.
Again, their more detailed review would typically come
as long
after.
as it would be taken care of. Okay, all right, thank you.
Do we have any other comments or questions for staff? All right. Actually, just quick, before you ask your next question, Liz, let me just have a quick procedural question for Mr. Dumay. Insofar as, is there anything that needs to be incorporated from the discussion we just had on IWW? I don't know what's allowed to cross the stream or anything like that. I mean, I feel like we've made the correct motion and everything's good, but I just want to make sure that, because these are two different votes.
I don't believe so, Mr. Chairman.
All right, okay. And I think much was said during the hearing itself, which will apply to both anyway, so I'm comfortable with that. But Ms. Pearson's really good at speaking to a record, so I just want to make sure that we're also making a good record as well. So, all right. Well, good. Then, and that's it. I'm in full support of this. I think it's an excellent application. Oh, sorry, Ms. Gillette, you had another question, please.
No, I don't have a question. Is what I do want to say is now that my questions have been answered, and I'm sorry about the inland wetlands issue and the stormwater, because I think this is a beautiful project. I think it is enhancing not only to the school and their own community, if you will, the community at large. I think any kind of school program, particularly one that is as well respected with the history that the New England Jewish Academy has, and Ben Braun's and all the rest. It's a wonderful, wonderful addition to West Hartford, not only for the town, but for all of the people who live in the town. And I'm very, very pleased to support it.
Thank you, Ms. Gillette. Do we have any other comments? Yeah, I want to echo Liz's comments. I think I said pretty much everything I needed to during the presentation itself. I may have to explain to Rabbi Berger at Solomon Schechter tomorrow why I was flirting with another Jewish academy. But besides that, I think it's an excellent program. I'm excited to see this growth. So then with that, I'd like to try your minds. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And I believe I heard Mr. Kaplan.
Confirmed.
Thank you very much.
5-0. Thank you very much. All right, final application is number 14, 25 Kane Street, the IWW application by Starbucks Coffee Company. For purposes of discussion, I will entertain a motion on this item. Ms. Gomes, thank you.
I was up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I make a motion to approve the inland wetland watercourse permit for 25 Kane Street, subject to our standard wetlands conditions of approval, as will be outlined by Mr. Dumais. I got it this time.
Thank you, Ms. Gomes. Any comment on your motion, Ms. Gomes?
No, I think that the rain garden is a really great addition, and I'll echo what you said earlier, Mr. Chairman. The improvements to this general area and intersection are very welcome and exciting for the town of West Hartford.
Just a quick programming question for Mr. Dumais. Is there any other, did we miss any conditions that we needed to add to the motion?
Mr. Chairman, we did not.
Thank you.
Actually, I take that back. There's a slightly modified version of a condition we talked about in the last one regarding the stormwater maintenance plan. In this instance, it also says that all the confirmation prior to CO from the project engineer or soil scientist that the construction of that rain garden stormwater feature includes confirmation that all the plantings have been installed per the plan of record.
Thank you, Mr. Dumais. This is Kevin Hearn, Chair again. To the extent that needs to be incorporated into your motion, do you agree to that, Ms. Gomes?
So moved, yes.
Thank you. All right. Do we have any comments on this? Any other comments on this? All right.
None on my part.
Okay. Yeah, I think this is good. I'm excited to see this bear fruit, as it were. So, all right. Let me try your minds. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed. Sorry, Mr. Kaplan, your vote.
Aye.
Thank you. 5-0 on this item. Thank you, everybody who presented. I believe we are skipping item number 15, and we're going to move on to the town council referral on item number 16.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is a referral from the town council, again, circling back to the Kane Street Shopping Plaza, 245 Prospect Avenue, filed on behalf of Prospect Plaza Improvements. And it's the application, and Attorney Olson put together a very thorough application, but it's a fairly simple request. So because this is one of our older or oldest special development districts in town, it goes back to the pre-1967 zoning ordinances. And at the time where the the plaza was initially approved, it was approved subject to the permitted uses that were applied at that time. In 1967, thereabouts, the old zoning that West Hartford utilized was updated, and we more or less have some of the structure and uses that our current zoning still refers to and uses in language. The conditions of approval for the plaza were never updated to permit all of the underlying uses that are applicable in the BG district, which is the underlying standard that this special development district should draw from in terms of its permitted uses. And absent that, it's not able to kind of draw from that full set of approvals because there was an old condition that said they were limited to kind of the uses in place at that time. So Mr. Pudlick went through in consultation with the property owner, looking at a potential new tenant that would be prohibited absent an SDD condition, allowing them rights to have the same uses permitted in any BG district. So that's what they're asking for, is to allow the same underlying standards that apply to any BG district to be eligible to them in this instance.
We have questions for Mr. Dumais on this item.
Yep, go ahead. I see Commissioner
Ms. Gomes, please.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Dumais, I apologize if I was looking at some of the materials. I just want to make sure, will the modification work looking forward as well? So if the BG district is later amended to include or include new uses or exclude current uses, will that similarly modify the SDD regulations?
Yes. So the SDD, while it's somewhat restrictive, it's somewhat permissive, but it draws on the underlying zoning district. So if that underlying zoning district uses are changed, this district or any of the other districts, which include, Corbin's, Bishop, all of our other larger shopping plazas don't have this kind of restriction in place. So they'd get the rights of that district and any new uses that are added into it.
Thank you.
And this doesn't forego their required amendment process, Commissioner Gillette, if they were to come back and change the facade or build a new building, that still needs to go back through the full hearing process or potentially administrative process. This just allows them to start to kind of program uses there. And if that triggers modifications to the district, they have to go through the normal process from a development standpoint.
So this basically just makes it an SDD retail shopping area like our other ones.
Correct.
So this is not in effect nullifying, we were an SDD, but now we've got all the things for the underlying zone, and it really is no longer an SDD. That's not what this.
Correct.
Okay.
I note that I thoroughly enjoyed the historical tiptoe that through the town records that this created, all the names and as they moved up in the ranks as the years went by. It was really neat to follow when I was going through this.
I did.
And Glass, this is your life.
Yeah, it was like associate planner Miller Limson,
Yeah.
I did notice that too.
Little baby Miller, back in the day.
Those.
So I was actually, Liz, I was looking for your name the whole time when I reviewed this. It was distracting.
Yeah, there was no, but I did John Foster.
Yeah. All right, so do we have any other questions on this item? No. Okay. All right, so then I believe the nature of the motion would be to recommend approval if that's where we're heading on this. So I would entertain a motion to that effect. Ms. Gomes.
I will make a motion to recommend approval for this matter.
All right. Any discussion? Yeah, I would say just incorporate my prior enthusiasm into this one because I'm out of gas. So
Ditto.
yeah. All right. Good. Oh, well, let me try your minds then. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you, Mr. Kaplan. Loud and clear. All right. So item number 16 is done. Final item is item number 17, Town Planners Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to let everyone know at our next meeting in April, we will have a outdoor dining ordinance that will be officially referred and come back to Planning Commission. I've been discussing that for some time with you all, that it basically brings us into compliance with the new state changes and how municipalities are allowed to regulate outdoor dining. In addition, I am still going to try to find a time for a special meeting for a low impact development follow-on meeting. Mr. Pudlick and myself are managing a couple other boards and commissions that have been conflicting with our ability to schedule another additional evening meeting, but it's not lost on our radar. So I'm going to send an email out to see your availability either later in March or sometime in April for that meeting. And then lastly,
just clarify something on the agenda. Our meeting next month is in person, A. B, at 6 p.m. Is that correct?
That's correct. And the reason for that, Mr. Chairman, is that is our annual capital improvement special meeting.
That's right. Okay. All right. Good. I'm sorry. Did I jump in the middle of, did you have anything further, Mr. DeMay?
That's it.
Okay. All right. Well, that's about it. I'm actually genuinely looking forward to seeing you guys next month before we go back to virtual again. All right, good. Then with that, let's entertain a motion to adjourn. There we go, Ms. Gomes.
I will make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you. All right, let me try your minds. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Those opposed? All right. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you all.
everybody. See you soon.
Yeah.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.